There was. So
Yeah.
you should be live now.
But it's still.
Oh.
There you go.
So,
Thank you.
Just sent it.
Leave it unlocked. I was doing computer security for part of what I was doing, so that's why I hate Facebook.
Okay. Alright, everyone, let's get started with meeting number 8. Roll call, please.
Ash Shake.
Here.
Sarah Cornelly.
Here.
Chelsea Campbell.
Here.
Ryan O'Connor.
Here.
Lisa Cunningham.
Here.
Bob Broadus.
Here.
Adam Haid.
Here.
Candace Whitehouse.
Here.
Ben Hemphill.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Excellent. Anyone have any issues with the agenda as written? No? Okay. No public comment today, it doesn't look like.
I would just like to bring up that Gabby did pull some numbers for us for responses as of this morning to the poll on the website and Facebook. Obviously, those will be posted when they're closed. She will post them on your webpage. But they're there just so she wanted to share that with you this evening, just so you know you were getting responses.
that's awesome, thank you. Sorry.
And for those people that don't have Facebook like me, the printout that's tacked up are the comments that people left on the Facebook page. In case you don't do Facebook, which I don't, so.
Seems pretty clear, at least one of them.
Yeah, that one is very clear.
Yeah, even an odd,
Pass it around.
I was following, so.
No worry.
Yeah.
And I am happy to email that PDF version to the group if you don't like.
Yeah, I think that would be useful. We'll just wait until it's closed out.
Yeah, okay, send them all at once?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it looks like at least one of them is fairly clear. Second one, there's a solid slant the other way, in one way, to have the elections in even years at least. Yeah, district and wards, that one's a
I think we should
controversial one.
follow up with that one with an explanation as to the advantages of each side.
Yeah, I
Because-
think we might need to do more detail on that.
Advantage and disadvantage, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, because there was no education with that one really,
Yeah.
which again, I appreciate and I understand why.
We're still being educated, I mean,
I know.
can we redistrict more often than every 10 years?
I don't think so.
so
I mean, that's huge to some.
in the in Hillary's running draft, I guess we'll move on to the review of previous discussion stuff. But in Hillary's running draft, there is a section where she removed the wording where it says that it's gonna be based on the federal census. And she said she referenced a court case where it's actually there's an argument to be made where it can be done more often than just based on census using other data. So it's potential, yes.
But I mean, if we write it in, the potential's there for it to be challenged too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, well, as
But
long as-
the court precedent shows that it can be done using other criteria, as long as they're objective criteria, not just because people didn't like how the districts fell out.
And is that detailed in the case?
I didn't go through all of it, so, but I think we need, that I saw was in there, but she at least removed the wording that ties it to the federal census. So, yeah, it's in the running draft, so it's good to keep track of as we go through. But yeah, I would say let's wait to find out if we're actually gonna do districting before worrying about redistricting. Alright. Does anyone have anything else for go backs? I went through the running draft just to find like the big ones, and I think the biggest one was where she had changed the census-based districting wording. There was also words on the fines, like section 608, where fines are listed as like maximum allowed under Colorado statute. She says there's an argument to be made that we can actually exceed those for local matters. So that's another question we had was whether we can actually exceed some of the statutory limits. And she also removed the in ink requirement wording from the petition stuff. So not to say we have to accept other forms, but that there's no like hard requirement that everything has to be done in paper if in the future more reasonable and verifiable. She put in the wording for like verifiable something, like signature. So yeah, if there comes a better way to do signature gathering, we'll be positioned to actually use them. Those were the big ones I had noted. Did anyone have anything else going through some of the running drafts? No? Alright. Then I think we're good to step into our charter review for Articles 8 and 9. These ones were okay, so starting from the beginning, 801,
Actually,
It's a heavy set.
did you see Hiller's email?
which one?
Andrew's comment.
One to discuss all of these items before.
Oh, that's right, yeah, she did
Yeah,
mention
for
that.
general
I
purpose.
hate to open that box, but.
No. She's right, those were some that I just kind of, I had noted and I'd asked Lisa to send out, which is apparently not the best way to handle collaboration, so.
I assure
I
you, my
apologize.
intention, no, I assure you, for record, for everybody's listening, for everybody here, my intentions were not nefarious. Please do not come at me. I'm surprised our emails are not flooded with people calling for my resignation yet. My new theme song that was going to be Breaking the Law by Judas Priest. I am very sorry. It was not intentional.
And I had requested, cause I had some other things going on and I wanted to make sure everyone can see it and just put it on our shared folder or whatever, so that was again, not the intention. But we don't have to, I don't think, go through all of those answers, cause there was a lot that we were just holding on to as we go, right? Like the open space section we're gonna review today, even in odd years we're working on. We haven't come back to like, I think I wanted to make, the voting style another poll question for later, so all of that stuff kinda, a lot of this is just stuff we're keeping in mind as we go through. I think once we have a more solid framework, we can go back and like nail down some of these details, cause a lot of these were things that were gonna be affected by other decisions which haven't been made. Were there any in particular you wanted to bring up?
No, I saw that and I thought, oh, if we're supposed to address all this, cause maybe there's parts of this that, with her drafting of the charter, hinges on these needing to be really nailed down.
No, a lot of them she's kind of noted in the running draft that, were pending later decision and stuff. I think it was just in response to us trying to keep everyone informed of what's going on, so, without calling us out specifically, so. So yeah, I think we're good to keep that go back document as like a running, like, we can keep a running tally of those and just mail them out at the end of each meeting so that everyone has them as we go through. Okay, so did anyone have anything in general then, or sorry, is that it for go backs? Everyone okay?
Do we go back?
How do we wanna handle public comment or
So,
reviewing public comment?
That's
right, there was
Per
a very,
article or?
do you mean like the tally you're keeping or?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I mean, we can bring up if we had any specifically towards our topics for today, section 8 and 9.
Instead of going over all of them,
Right,
just going.
just the
over
ones that are applicable for today.
Yeah.
So I know 8 and 9, I don't think we'd gotten any regarding open trails, so it would just be regarding finances. I saw the one, was there any others from previous ones?
I don't think there was. I think that was just. Yeah, that was it for Article 8 and 9.
So I was kind of figuring out how we can address some of the points brought up in the public comment that we received. It was kind of extensive and like the topics scattered throughout. So I kind of noted on my running draft where each article or each suggestion or recommendation was applicable. And so we can kind of address them as we get to those points, rather than trying to talk all of those and then go back through the topics again as we go through the running draft. So, anyone have any issues with that, or
No, not
just
at
keep
all.
me honest, cause I think I got, there were 9 and I think I put them down, all of them at various places where I thought they were most relevant. So keep me honest as we go through. Okay, so first question then would be fiscal year. I know we'd had discussions previously about having it staggered or offset from calendar year, and there were some points made against that. Does anyone wanna rehash that, or are we good with keeping the fiscal year as January 1st to December 31st?
I think the point that Hillary made in her comment was that there's no real impact to changing the fiscal year,
Right.
since we still have to do stuff with the state and county who are calendar year. So,
So this just makes sure, this just makes us work on the same schedule as everyone else we work with.
Yeah.
Keeping it calendar year based. Okay.
does that make sense for you? You're our finance person,
I
right?
am, yes,
Okay.
second permanent finance director.
Yeah.
Yes, please stay on the calendar year.
Sorry, I didn't, we didn't introduce you, so you're here for the
Right.
finances part.
Yes.
I don't think I've
finances.
met you,
I don't think I've met
anyone.
most of you. So, hi, Stephanie Furman, finance director, happy to be here, nice to meet you all.
Nice to meet you.
And I'm Patrick Hammer, I'm the Parks and Recreation Director.
Alright, might be a while before we get to your
You
sections.
gotta listen to all this money stuff
It's
first.
all good.
Okay, so we'll keep our fiscal year calendar year for recommendations from various sources. Okay, anything with 802 regarding the annual budget? Is that, sorry, go ahead.
I think we had brought up if that is, well, I'm wondering if it would make sense to bring it sooner. I don't know if it does or not, just to give more time. I don't know if there's a scramble at the end of the year. It'd be nice to not scramble in December to pass the budget. So having it before October 15th would help. I don't know what that looks like.
I would suggest that that's about the right balance between getting current year fiscal information as much as possible. We actually start working on the budget probably February.
We're doing that about now, yeah.
Yeah, now. And try to have a meeting with the Board of Trustees that has the latest fiscal information for the current year in June or July, so we're having at least half a year's information, and then get direction from the Board of Trustees that we can use to formulate the budget for the next year in July, August, September, present the proposed budget in October, and then have at least it gives you at least multiple opportunities to review the budget during that time frame. So we typically have one formal public hearing and 2 or 3 different opportunities for the public to weigh in on it, and the board to make adjustments to the proposed budget. So did I miss anything?
I don't think so. I think I would just add that last year we did kind of revamp the budget calendar, and I feel like it worked really well, and I don't feel like we were crunched. We actually even had built in, backup plan and backup plan. So I think we had plenty of time, and I think that that's the right date. And it's in line with the state requirements.
Anyone have any objections to that, keeping it for October 15th? Alright, budget hearing. So this requires the town to hold one hearing before November 30th, right? But you said it gives us, with the current timeline, it gives multiple opportunities to receive feedback. Okay. Yeah, So, yeah, Hillary's comment is that this is more specific than current Colorado revised statutes say. So 803.2, the second point.
Yeah.
Depositing them in the office of the town clerk, is that how it's currently done? Is just there's paper copies held in?
It's stated that way, and that they would come to the town clerk to get a copy, and we would have access to give them to, but we don't actually hold a paper copy because it's constantly changing. But we have access to the online version, and should we need it, we could provide it if somebody wanted to come and view it.
So throughout this section, the phrase conveniently available are used. Is this something we could do here, just so that it's not specific to, Debbie has to hand them out to people who come looking?
I would say so, I would defer to Hillary to comment on, but I would say that yes, that's acceptable.
Okay. Cause it seems like there's a bunch of different ways that things are supposed to be made available.
Ooh.
And throughout this section, there's references to conveniently available, there's this one, held by the town clerk.
Once it's presented to the board, it becomes an agenda item from finance, and so it's on an agenda, so it's conveniently available there. However, because of the way people request records, they would still probably go to the clerk's
Yeah.
office and say, can I get this? And we can either point them to it or email them a copy of it. if they
Okay.
requested.
Is everyone okay with trying to make it consistent, or for convenience sake?
Consistency's always good.
Okay, so we can ask Hillary about that then.
And the low hanging fruit, there should be 3 items under 8.3, not 1 twice.
1 and 2.
They will do that at the end.
Yeah.
I'm not calling out editorial issues because we'll have to have a pass through from a copy editor or someone professional on that at the end.
Yeah.
Okay, so the 803, the last item there, before final adoption, increase, decrease, or add or strike out. That just means that you can have a running changes as more info comes in.
I'm not sure we need to state it, but.
Yeah, cause once it's not, it only gets solidified once you notice for the public hearing, right? That's when it's supposed to be, this is what it is, further changes require further public notice or anything like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, scope of annual budget. This one seemed fairly standard, but does anyone have anything in particular in 804 they wanted to?
I had one, and maybe it's a nit,
Mhm.
in 3. I find it's probably highly unlikely, but there is a chance the audit wouldn't be done. I've seen audits take a lot longer than expected in some cases. And does that matter?
My reading of that meant the previous year,
I
so
know. So
The-
it would have been delayed by 12 months, roughly. It's unlikely,
fire
but
me. Sorry. You're right, I actually did just hear a story earlier today
Yeah.
where the people, and it actually was no fault of the town, the auditors up and quit. Anyway,
In
it was
one-
not their fault,
Yeah, I know.
but that did happen,
I've had that happen with a nonprofit I work with,
so.
where it was the auditor just totally messed up. And that's why it came to mind. So what happens if it's not there? I don't expect it not to be there,
Right.
but
It's an
I don't know what would happen.
Yeah, it just says it shall be there. What happens if it's not?
I think
I mean-
that begs the question, what is the enforcement action? And in that case, it would be proceed with what you can.
Yeah.
And,
So,
You could change the wording to just say most recent audit, so then if the last year hadn't been audited, then go back another year, I don't know if that's even helpful though.
it could be we just drop it, I'm just raising it and see if people care or not.
This is outside my realm of expertise, so I'm gonna defer to a lot of people.
I mean, if you guys are happy with it, I'm willing to let it go. I just thought I'd ask the question.
I am fine with it,
Okay,
yeah, like you said, it's rare and I
Yeah.
think we could come up with some sort of workaround at that point in time if that situation ever
okay,
arose.
that's fair.
I did have a little laugh on 8041 because it says the shall be in such form as town manager deems desirable or town council may require. So I don't know what was going through my head, but I said interpretive dance?
There are lots of different formats. Everybody has their different style and boards, councils like some. Yeah.
It got a lot better as you kind of took over and had presenters coming in with different ways of doing things. It's gotten so much easier.
Oh,
Yeah,
Candace
17.
really
Yeah.
did that. I miss her. And Cassie's doing a great job. Candace laid that foundation. So thank you for that. Yeah, interpretive dance is probably not up my alley, so let's try not to do that.
Okay, anyone else have anything for 804? Okay. Alright, now the meat of things. So 805, adoption of the budget and appropriation. Per Hillary's comment there, it says that this is gonna be, that means that this is specifically a resolution and not an ordinance.
I think that's what it has always been.
It is an ordinance currently.
It's currently an ordinance?
Maybe Eagle was ordinance, so she changed it, is my guess.
Yeah. But like this, the specific wording here, she's calling out that this is specifically a resolution, not an ordinance.
If it is an ordinance, we should just change it.
Yeah, what is the functional difference there?
That's a good question.
I mean,
Is it-
typically an ordinance is used to modify the code.
Codify
Yeah,
something, right?
and so I don't understand the reasoning of making a budget document an ordinance.
Yeah, I think you'd have to refer back to what are the differences in the requirements that are in the charter for resolutions versus ordinances. Typically, you think of an ordinance as something that changes the municipal code. This would not do that in this instance.
But the voting requirements, from what I recall, is we kept them the same, right? For resolution and ordinances, it's the same among the
Didn't
council.
have to do with applicability, like when it applies. I'm trying to find it right now.
Oh, right, adoption is immediate for resolution, whereas ordinance is 30 days.
Right,
Okay.
and depending on the charter requirements, an ordinance would be subject to
Recall.
Referendum.
referendum.
And we specifically said that the budget is not.
It's best to be a resolution.
Yeah, okay, so I think that's where this came from, is when we said, when we included it as not subject to referendum, she made it a resolution, and that it needs to be in effect immediately. Okay. Yeah, see, number 2 here is where it says again, conveniently available. So this is one place where that wording is, it doesn't specify the town clerk anywhere here, it just says available. Okay, anything for 805, 1 or 2 or 3? 3 is just continuing with month to month based on previous year's budget until it can be passed. Let's see, I think at this point, one of the public comments we received had to do with lapse in appropriations. What happens if, like, I guess what would you do for, like, if a fund rolls over to the next year due to something like this, if it's either not completely used or if it rolls month to month and it's just continued that way for a while?
I interpreted that comment slightly differently, just
Okay.
not really referencing the the worst case, oh my gosh, we didn't pass a budget situation, but in general, there is a statement in 8051 that says that budget lapses. And I think the statement that it currently doesn't is not accurate. Right now, everything does lapse, so this is not changing anything.
Okay.
We do choose to roll over capital, like unused capital in the first supplemental. Currently, that's what we choose to do.
But that requires a board action.
It requires a board approval in that first supplemental.
Okay.
And
So-
they have the power to say no if they
So
wanted to.
by default, it does not roll over.
It does not, nothing rolls over.
Okay.
I liked, I read the Castle Rock one indicating that capital does roll over automatically, and I think there are some pros to that. Cause currently, we do choose to do the rollover at first supplemental, which is often in May. In the meantime, we cannot upload the budget into the system because it hasn't been approved, so the rollovers haven't been approved. And so there's a lot of going back and forth between prior year and current year to find out what is the remaining budget on this project. So there could be some potential administrative efficiencies from automatically rolling over the capital, but then it does limit your ability to cut that off if needed, so.
Yeah.
Pros and cons.
Thoughts from anyone else?
Capital expenditure is like a project.
Construction projects.
Okay. So if a project is in process and it isn't finished by the end of the year and it's not approved, then work stops because the contractor stops getting paid?
Right. But if
If
we choose not to,
lapses.
if at the first supplemental we did not approve the rollover, we would have to stop work at that point in time.
But you do roll it over.
Right now, by board action.
But the
But
board,
it takes the
the
board.
board could choose to stop a project by not funding it.
Right. I mean, that's always
Would that
always
be
in
in
their
their budget adoption, right? During the time of reviewing the budget, they would have decided to keep or eject that project. So you'd have a heads up. You don't want it to, I think what we're trying to avoid is the mistakes, the accidents. Like, oops, there's for example, when I was working on the Erie Single Track Advocates, we had a fundraising and we ended up taking some money and it was put into a fund through Parks and Rec. It was a nonprofit set aside thing. And then a year later, I called the town, I was like, hey, how much money is in that fund? It's like, there's zero. It's like, well, we haven't spent any of it. It was like $1,500. Where'd that go? And this scenario had essentially zeroed it out and they had to go back and find that amount and recognize nothing had been spent. So while it's not a project, it was a bank account, at least in my understanding, it was something that we had set aside to be used for some future activity. Is that something that could be subject to zeroing out when the intent was not to remove funds for that?
I'm trying, this all sounds familiar, cause I think I was here
It was
for
the
this.
civic fund.
Yeah, and,
It was the
Then never
that
mind.
the nonprofit, our 501c.
then I was not.
Yeah, no, you weren't
I
here.
don't think you were here.
We since used it for the dog park and other things as well. This was quite a while ago,
It was, yeah.
first stint at Parks and Rec,
Okay.
when this happened and they did fundraising and it went into that Erie
Where did
Civic
it
Fund.
go?
We'd never spent it, so.
It just,
That maybe sounds like, was it pre-Tyler?
yes,
Okay. That couldn't happen in our,
Software, not a
Yeah.
person.
sorry, Tyler is our enterprise resource planning. It's our accounting software,
Oh, thanks, I thought we were talking about a person.
right?
Throw them under the bus.
Sorry about that. No, it is a software that we use, and that that is just not possible in our current software. Our funds are segregated, cash is segregated, it is all.
Okay.
That particular issue could not happen. Cause that's what the fear on my face was like, what? How did that happen? Like, we have it all set up so that they are
It was
self-balancing.
surprising, it doesn't
It sounds like
It
they
didn't
were
really affect
doing
much,
on
but it
paper.
wasn't, it was surprising. And so when I read through this lapse, that's where my mind goes. And that was just a mistake, so that's why I
Yeah.
think that was the situation. But if that's not, I mean, if this is addressing the intentional reduction of one of those accounts because the board stops the budget on that makes perfect sense.
I guess another one that kind of refers here was the comment about requiring a reserve.
That's different than lapse, right?
Right, but this is all regarding the general fund. Oh, sorry, I guess that is 806 then, sorry.
Yeah.
I was moving ahead, sorry.
Sorry.
Anything else for 805, 1, 2, or 3? Are we happy with how things are currently done, essentially?
It's
Better.
not broke, why fix it?
And with the current process, like, this wording is consistent with how things are currently done, right?
Correct.
Okay. Then 806, then that's the one about kind of the general fund, and one of the comments was about requiring a reserve. In general, I think that seems kind of odd for a specific appropriation for a specific project, but it does make sense to have a reserve for like the general fund, right?
Yes, very much so. I'll defer to you for the details.
And currently that is, our reserve policy is in an ordinance. And we currently have a reserve of 25% of operating expenditures for the budgeted operating expenditures of the next fiscal year, plus $7.5 million, which was passed by resolution, and now I forgot what year, many years ago. Ish. The state requires a much lower one. I think it's about 3% of operating expenditures, and then the GFOA, our governmental
Finance officers.
Officers Association. I was like, sometimes speaking in public is not my thing. I just blank.
You'll warm up to it.
I blank. Sorry. Their recommendation is 2 months worth of operating expenditures. So the 25% of operating expenditures is already in excess of the best practice from GFOA.
This was established by Steve a long time ago.
Yeah.
And it has been a source of pride, at least during my time on the board, to know that we were not only meeting but exceeding that reserve for a while.
Yeah.
So, but there's a comment that says that there's indication that the budget in 2025 will drop below that.
Yeah, the comment was the indication about 2025. That is our long-term forecast tool. The one thing I can tell you about any forecast is it's not going to be right. We do not have a crystal ball. And so that is just our tool to look into the future in terms of how do things look. I guess we did not approve or adopt anything that is going to cause us to go into a negative fund balance or dip below our reserve. These are just forecasts. And the thing about forecasts too is we cannot include things that are not quite estimable at this point in time. So,
Construction
things,
costs
and revenues too. So as of right now, like what revenues are going to come from town center and when are they going to start? That is not in our forecast because there's no way for us to quantify it just yet. And so these are things to keep in mind as you're looking at a forecast. It is very common that several years out in a forecast, it looks like, oh gosh, like that looks bad. But that is just how forecasts are. And so they're a great tool and they're a great guide. I don't think that it's a reason to panic or add anything in the.
Isn't that sort of a purpose of a forecast? So you'd see things before they happen,
Mhm.
at least to plan.
Yeah.
So, but
So your finance, I was gonna say, so your finance director can tell your public works and parks and recs director to chill out.
Stop spending money.
I'm good at that.
I would just add, I think in our forecast, we try to be as realistic as possible, but we err on the side of being more conservative on the expenditures, saying expenditures are gonna be greater than they probably will be, and revenues will probably be less than they actually are. So that ends up typically providing more conservatism in the long-range forecast. And as Stephanie said, if you see a forecast that's not going down 5 years from now, that's one I would not believe.
Right. Like they that would be way too rosy. I would also say that looking at that long-term forecast, which was included in the budget packet back in November, it does not dip that far below the reserve requirement. And if I recall, I think it's even, so if we're looking at these different reserve requirements, it would be above the GFOA recommended benchmark. It would just be below our 25% plus 7.5 million. And so it's still in a reasonable point. It's just below our current.
And in the 5th year, it actually starts to come back up as well. So it's reflecting expenditures happening at that point in time.
Do you have anything else to add on?
One of the things, to your point, in terms of it being a source of pride, and I would say that the existing reserve policy has served the town really well. As we're growing fast, there's a lot of unpredictable things happening. Revenues have been, especially the last 10 years, have been really wildly changing because of the nature of the economy and development activity. So it's been really helpful. As the town matures and revenue streams kind of stabilize, we've become less dependent on development revenue as we have over the last 5 years. I think the need for that large of a reserve really sets aside a lot of money that could be used for other things. And that's the trade-off there. How much do you want to set aside for unanticipated economic changes or opportunities? Really, the way the town has used the reserve in the past 5 years in particular is taking advantage of opportunities to buy land. The I-25 Gateway property, we spent $5 million on. The town center property, we spent $4 million on. So it's really enabled those kinds of things that a growing town may encounter. But as the town matures, having a reserve balance that great really keeps a lot of money that's, it's hedging against risks that you could probably deal with less money, or those kinds of opportunities. Maybe you're better off dedicating that money to capital expenditures that the public wants now, not in the future.
So then that leads me to one question which could come to with a second one. The first one is, I don't recall seeing reserves in other charters. So does anybody, does a reserve belong in the charter, or is that something that's more of a policy?
Well, she said that the GFOA thing is essentially a requirement, right?
But that's the
GFOA
lower
does not
level.
make requirements. They're all best practices and suggestions. There is a state requirement, but that's too low to even recommend. So like, that's just not. I mean, I think I would agree that I haven't seen. I haven't read that many charters, but I have not seen reserve requirements in charters.
Well, we have one of the highest reserve requirements from any town around here, and it has served us well, as you said. But writing it into the charter makes it more difficult to change.
I know.
What if we, because I like the idea of keeping a reserve, but like Malcolm has brought up, that 25% is pretty excessive once we're an established town. What if we did put like a small one in there while still being able to keep the 25% by ordinance, but like use wording like maintain at least?
There is a state requirement that is the 3%, so that is already there by law.
Oh, I thought you were saying the state requirement was less like not worth mentioning.
Well, it's the 3%,
It's
which
the
is
3%.
It's not enough to be
Which is like
reasonable.
it's like a couple of weeks of operating expenses.
Well,
I would say I'm
Our own
advocating
minimum
for it,
requirement.
but Boulder is routinely right in that 3%
Yeah.
range. So
The GFOA best practices document, which is longer than you would expect it to be for this topic, it does go into some very good points about as a city grows or a town grows, that need for that reserve is less because you have a much more predictable revenue and expenditure stream. And so it's really for things like a pandemic or an earthquake or, depending on your location, kind of what types of things happen. And so that would explain perhaps why Boulder has such a low one, because they have they're much more established and they have some pretty consistent revenues and expenditures.
So I would say the best place for it is in an ordinance
Yes.
adopted by the council that the council can adjust as conditions warrant.
That's okay with me.
I support that.
In which case, it doesn't matter if the 7.5 million, I'm just curious.
What is 25% right now? What's our current
The budget's
reserve?
in the 90 million range.
So we have 90
no,
million
it's-
plus 7 million?
Sorry,
Check with Tyler.
that's total, like total. So it's just for general fund, and it is only operating expenses. So it's 25% of operating expenses, which I just pulled that earlier and I'm looking for it. So operating expenses were around 43 million, and I cannot do math in front of people, just like I cannot talk in front of people.
Roughly 11.
So roughly 11 and plus the 7.5 million, which is currently
So
required as well.
Which is a large number, so my question, which was going to be, is the reason it's not tagged to inflation, it's already
well, the
almost
ordinance can
equal.
change it as
I know.
needed, so.
I know, so, but you had said it had been 7.5 for a long time, it doesn't matter. I'm in favor of not putting it in the charter.
Yeah, then I think the question is, are we okay with leaving how it is and letting it be set by ordinance?
If it's not broke, don't fix it.
I like that. Okay, so we'll leave,
Well, that's what's currently what they do,
Right, so
and it's not in
leave
the
it.
charter, it's not in the charter.
We don't want it in the charter, I don't
So they
think.
do it just fine without us putting it
Yeah.
in the charter.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it
But
keeps
it's
the
in their,
flexibility.
it's in their policy right now.
Yeah, it's in their policy, but they don't need us to put it in the charter too.
That way, when the town does mature, if they don't want to have 25%.
what I've heard is like, it's supposed to adjust as we grow.
Right.
And we are in a very high phase of growth. If we put it in the charter, what our reserve should be now, then once we're established, we're gonna be sitting on a lot of money that can't be used for anything. And it's gonna be by law that we can't touch it, which restricts the
Yeah,
town.
because it would have to go to a vote to change the charter.
Yeah.
I think it's fine the way it is.
Yeah, there's a statutory requirement to catch us at the bottom end. I'm okay with not putting a more restrictive form in there.
How long has the 25% been in place?
That has been a long time. That is a very common number that is used. The best practices is a little bit lower, but 25% is a pretty common reserve.
And adding the 7.5 million makes it more like 35% or more.
Yeah, how long has that been, how Erie operates them?
I think the 7.5 million was put in, right, I mean, I don't if you could pull the muni code, but I think the additional was, I believe, added on right around the time I started, which was right after an economic downturn like 2008.
That sounds right. I was
Right.
gonna say
I was gonna
2010.
guess
Yeah,
But-
but so it could,
In that
in
realm.
that frame, I seem to remember that board specifically asking for those additional reserves. I don't know how long the 25% though.
As far as, yeah, I'm
I
not
think
sure.
that's probably.
It's been a long time, I would say.
Yeah, so it survived a lot of boards.
And
Right.
a lot of economic
downturn.
uncertainty.
Yes. I would also say, just from that, the difference between that downturn and the one we currently had was the change in sales tax laws and things like that that have come along since that last downturn really helped us through this most recent one. So we have different things in place now that we didn't then.
Okay. So I'm okay with leaving 806 as written.
I second that.
I don't know how I'm feeling about this. I'm feeling like we still need some sort of cushion with at least a percentage. Maybe we don't need the 7.5 million also, but a higher percentage than the statute currently at 3. And if I'm alone on that, that's totally fine. We can move on, but
I'd say it's over prescriptive, and a good town won't be running on that anyway,
I agree.
so.
Anyone else wanna in favor or oppose?
I mean, I wanted to oppose it, but they answered all my questions very thoroughly and I feel satisfied with the statutory requirement.
I just think about what the insurance company says, but less in is better than more.
Okay. I think we're mostly in agreement then that we'd like to keep it as written. 807 regarding other funds. Anyone have anything regarding this? I figured one of the comments was relevant to here. The expenditures of funds restricted only to the purpose of the fund or something like that. Sorry, I don't have that page up.
Enterprise fund accounts.
Yes, so the transfer of funds and the enterprise fund account, or no, transfer was later, I think.
Yeah, it's section 809 was what the next
Yeah.
comment's about.
So I think I think it would have been the enterprise fund one.
He mentioned this in his comment, that current statutes, call it state statutes, already require this.
Yeah.
That enterprise funds can only be used for their.
Right.
They just like to read extra things.
I don't think this one, like I said, it's required to be used. So I don't know why we would need to change how this section is written for any of that.
Yes, it's similar to what we talked about Cora. If Cora gets repealed,
It's changed.
do we expect state statute to change where enterprise funds can be used for other things?
No. I mean, that is their purpose and the reason they were ever created, so I can't see that happening. I guess like I said, no crystal ball.
Sorry, you're on record. Okay. I think, I don't know if this one would be a good place to discuss there was one of the comments about the protection against overdrafting. Is that also? Cause that one would apply to like some of these enterprise funds or something like that, right? I think it was number 7 in the email. Yeah, I'm not sure how,
Printed it out.
I needed to.
I thought, Castle Rock has a very strict, what it seems like a prohibition from anyone in the town signing the town, or any town employee signing the town up for any additional expenditure, verbal or written, through an agreement, and does that happen?
Yeah, that was actually, I didn't get a chance to do it, but I had a question for Hillary. I don't think town employees cannot enter into contracts unless the funds have been budgeted in the first place. So if somebody did, I think this is a legal issue. I think that contract would be not enforceable.
Right.
But that's a legal question. I'm not an attorney.
Should we save that for?
Yeah, that might be a question for Hillary, because
And also whether the charter would in fact allow the town to exit a contract.
I think it would require the town to exit the contract, which, again, you might end up having to pay penalty if a contract has already been signed, and so it's like.
Again, it's a Hillary question.
I will say currently every contract that uses our format has a statement in it that says the funds must be appropriated. And if the contract ends in December and the funds aren't appropriated for the next year, the contract's over. We have, it's the way Hillary or Kendra has all of our contracts written.
Okay.
The funds have to be appropriated for the contract to be valid, otherwise we can get out of it.
I think that provision is either in Tabor or
Yeah.
certainly in state law.
Yeah,
because,
it's not just our words.
current boards can't constrain future boards. Like a multi-year contract is essentially void based on those provisions.
It's only applicable for the current year of the
Right.
budget, and then, any future stipulation would have to be reappropriated in the future budget.
Exactly.
So there's really no such thing as overdrafting of funds, because the budgets are appropriated 1 year at a time regardless. Okay. So 807, anyone have any questions or issues there? A lot of it is gonna be protected by state statute anyways, right? Okay, 808,
Is there a definition anywhere of what a long-term range is?
a long-range capital program.
Yeah, what is this?
Yeah,
I mean, do we say minimum of 5 years, 10 years, whatever? Or is it just up to interpretation of whoever's developing the plan as what they consider long range?
Well, we don't have a long range capital program now, do we?
We do.
As part of the forecast, we include our long-range capital expenditures for the 5 years.
5 years
It's
is duration.
general, and we sometimes do some analysis and estimates for further out.
Should we specify a minimum of 5 years, is the question.
I don't know. I don't know if that gains anything. That doesn't benefit anything by saying you have to specify a time, cause like you said, it might, some long range may not be 5 years, some may be
I don't think
3 years.
Okay, I just think it has no teeth. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out what is the purpose of
Is
this.
long range just more than a year? Is that
Yeah, I mean,
kind of my guess?
I just think it needs a
Well, thinking
definition.
from an
somewhere.
accounting standpoint, yes. You know, could anything less than 12 months is short term and anything longer than 12 months is long term.
So
I
we
guess
should
that-
put that in a definition if that's gonna be the case.
Yeah,
That's
and I guess
what it
that makes sense since we just talked about budgets are only approved really for 1 year at a time anyways. So anything longer than that would by necessity be termed a long range, right? Which would,
It just would be good to specify, that's all. I just think it's nebulous.
To Adam's point, I don't know that we adopt it. I mean, I know we present it and we analyze it, but is there any sort of adoption of our,
Capital program.
no, so that kind
So
of.
maybe we should
Yeah, I
change
mean,
that
it's-
word.
It was nice to have for prediction, or at least looking out in the future, and it helps you come up with the outlook you were talking about earlier, but requiring it,
Yeah,
adopting it, and then specifying some kind of minimum term, all seem to be overly prescriptive.
should we consider striking 808 then?
I would. I mean, just let it be the purview of the finance officer and the town manager, what they, if that helps them do the job, or a resolution by the board to require something like that.
so if you were reading this 808, what does that mean to you?
It does seem overly prescriptive in terms of actually adopting a formal capital program. It definitely seems like I'm not actually sure what I'm supposed to do there. In terms of, is that a resolution to approve? Are
Like a
we,
projection, a forecast of some kind?
which
or-
then, I mean, is, like I just said about a forecast, is all that we know is that it's
Yeah.
going to be wrong. So I mean, it's a useful tool and we will never stop using it. I mean, we will always have at least 5 years
Yeah,
forecasts.
But this adopt makes it sound like it's some document that's gonna
formal-
be like,
Well, and it's the contents of which are designated by the council, so then the council is dictating how this capital program
Yeah.
looks.
This is already in the ordinance, isn't it?
Is it this exact language?
Long-range planning, the town of Erie would develop a 5-year plan for capital improvements, well, okay, it's different, slightly different than that, but.
I think the only word I'm stuck on is adopt. I mean, because yeah, we will develop a 5-year capital plan. That is an ordinance.
So-
It's already,
yeah, so since we're already leaving a lot of this up to ordinance, I would say strike this and leave it into ordinance, cause our existing ordinance already includes a long-range capital planning, right?
I personally don't have a problem with this because I have worked in other jurisdictions where it was formally adopted as part of the budget. To me, this language is broad enough that it requires a capital program and incorporating it into the budgeting process. That's a good thing. I don't
how do
think
we-
it's necessarily.
Is it a second vote though by the council to adopt it?
It says alongside.
Typically it's part of the.
This is simultaneous.
Yeah, simultaneous.
Recommended budget. So this just formalizes it and makes, you know, I think we in our forecasts and in our, typically in the forecast, that's where we have it now, is including specific items, but this would formalize it into something that, okay, we know.
This is reinsurance, like, I mean, it's
Yeah, but what if this opens the door for a
Sentence?
council
That's one
member
sentence,
to nitpick that future projection when things get fuzzier and fuzzier out that far? So what, and then you end up with an inability to adopt the budget because there's something,
It's tied to this long range forecast.
yeah.
Well, that's, the nature of it is kind of like our forecast. It's like there are questions about what's actually gonna happen. The projects, what it does is force longer term planning. And planning for capital projects, especially when you're spending tens of millions of dollars on them, it's important to have some sort of schedule that shows, okay, this $2 million project's gonna happen next year, we're planning on this really large program 5 or 10, even 10 years from now. I think that's an important thing, and this language gives enough flexibility for the finance, and the town manager and the council to say, yeah, that's a long-range capital plan.
So from your point of view, from the finance point of view, you said reading this, you wouldn't know exactly what it puts you on the hook to do. How can we clarify it to make it actually like more?
I feel like now that we've talked about it a little bit more, I feel more comfortable with it. Just with what we were talking about in terms of how we present it with the budget.
I mean, ultimately, it gives the contents of which are designated by the council and.
So the council gets to decide what is included in that long-range capital program.
And then they can decide what duration is, so.
Well, I get it, I am cautious about the opportunity to pass the budget when something in the long-range program may not look attractive to certain council members. And you have no sway over the long, it's, the cone of uncertainty gets so much larger out there that you don't know, you're giving them what you have, but you may not have everything. And it gives them footing to disapprove a budget.
okay.
But-
I mean, like, but I mean, it's already how things are done now, right? Have you run into that problem in the past as a trustee?
No, we always just approve the budget for the next year.
I mean, it sounds like they've been having a long-term plan for a while. And I think a long-term plan is good, and there's a bunch of people on the board that don't wanna approve it. I mean, or does a budget have to be approved by everybody? No?
Resolution is majority.
It's majority only, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess to me, I'm on Stephanie's side, it's the adopt word that
Gotcha.
is bothering me simultaneously with the budget, because tying those together may jeopardize your adoption of the budget.
I see what you're saying.
So do you wanna like,
What if you change adopt to present?
I was
Or-
just
or
gonna say the
review.
word.
Yeah.
Develop, cause it's,
No,
that's how
it's-
it's kind of worded here.
But it's not,
It's currently worded as developed.
yeah, so what do you have
it's
the
developed
wording,
by the council?
Here,
can you read that?
that's the current policy. You want me to see if I can copy and paste this and email you?
That's right.
Is it longer than, what's this, one sentence?
Yeah, it's a whole
But
policy,
the town will do it, not the council.
well, but.
So I think it's more staff, and the council would review it. I don't think the council's gonna produce it.
Right,
No.
but this
yeah.
one
No,
just
but-
says it's produced and developed by the council, which is,
It's designated, no.
so they tell the finance director to create a plan. And then they say, okay, good plan, we pass it with our budget, right? That's kind of the gist of the idea here.
That's what this sentence says, yeah.
It's,
But you're concerned
what's the ordinance
that
number?
someone can give, that might give ammo to
213.
a sour gravy, the proverbial sour
Or,
grape
or
to
just
the-
someone who's, not in favor of the budget the way it is, even, they may not want to pass it the way it is anyway.
Ash, if we
But-
wanna, oh, I can give it back. Our current ordinance is 213B2.
That would be a code reference, I think.
Yeah. For our code. So changing adopt to match that.
Detail.
Develop.
What's the verb in there?
Develop,
Develop?
develop.
Sounds great.
Better than
There's a lot
adopt.
of parallels.
I'm
I
okay
mean, I
changing adopt to
concur.
develop.
Yeah,
That would be, that satisfies me.
I just wanna know, you know,
And maybe strike the simultaneously with the recommended budget so that it's kind of,
It kind
Well,
of
if
does go
it's-
hand in hand.
If
Right.
it's an ordinance, why do we need to put it in the charter?
Fair point.
If it's an ordinance.
it is, we are.
that line is literally in there for reassurance, for anybody who reads the charter can see, yes, they will adopt a long-term plan.
Yeah, if we got rid of it, then
Yeah.
technically you don't need a long-term plan.
A long-term plan,
But this forces a long-term plan.
and it's
which I'm-
important, it's
So
reassurance.
what if we change the verb to match what
So,
exists and then
develop.
strike
Right.
the simultaneously part? So that we have assurance that it exists without giving opportunity for what Adam is.
I think the
Talking about.
simultaneous part just means like when you're reviewing the budget, review the long range.
No.
Yeah.
It was the word, yeah, if we change the word adopt.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I
true.
don't-
If
But
that's-
even if you change it to develop, you can do it simultaneously.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
No,
think
that's-
simultaneously is
I
fine,
think it's in,
change
yeah.
the adoption of it.
So we wanna change to adopt,
Change the word adopt to develop.
Which then could be, strengthened yet again by ordinance if somebody, if the council wanted to put into an ordinance something stricter than develop, that's fine.
And this is just basically saying they need to review and they review the budget.
right, they need to, basically this is saying, you need to be looking at long-term.
And that's why I would say review rather than develop, because I really don't think the council's gonna develop it.
Well, they
But
assign
we're trying to match the
somebody else to do
ordinance
it.
at this point.
Yeah. Well, the ordinance is the town shall. It doesn't say the council shall.
So the
That's-
town,
We just
If
said
you're-
town
If
shall.
you're designating the contents
Take the word
and
council out of here.
also
Right.
developing,
Review makes the most sense to me, but.
Actually-
Because they're reviewing the budget as well,
Right.
they're not creating it.
I dig the word review too.
But Adam, your last suggestion about taking out the word council solves the problem as well.
Either way.
If you put it,
Yeah, take out council and change adopt to develop, then it matches the ordinance.
I feel like we're spending a lot of time on this.
Yes. More than we should, but.
Right, agreed.
Can we ask Hillary like how she would recommend to word it with our concerns in mind in our existing ordinance and then move on for the sake of this meeting?
you don't wanna stay here all night?
Not particularly.
okay, that's marked down as a question then. Transfer of funds, one of the
Comments out loud.
yeah, one of the comments talked about transferring funds. So I mean, this just, the way it's written, it already just allows you to transfer from one fund to another by resolution, right? So once you have a budget going, you say, oh, that one is underspending, this one is overspending, let's move. That's all this allows. So, but it doesn't prevent any sort of transfer within a fund, right? Different departments or anything like
Yeah,
that.
moving budgeted dollars from one department to another.
So this doesn't prevent that.
Right.
Let's see. So what was the actual concern then?
Might be too broad.
It references the state law, and the state law does prevent, you cannot transfer from one utility fund to a non-utility fund.
Right.
So that might be a piece that's assumed but not strict, but not written.
Right. So I guess for a transfer of funds between departments, how is that currently handled, like if it needs to be done?
Administratively.
Okay. And so if we leave it how it's written, that'll still be maintained, like town staff, town administrator can still approve some transfer of funds within the same department.
Or the council could adopt an ordinance restricting it further.
Okay.
But if I understand it correctly, you can't transfer from utility to say parks.
Correct.
And that's already how it's, yeah,
That's already how it, okay.
it was fine with that, cause yeah, we need to pay our utility bills, right?
We need parks.
I've got
And
a,
that's an enterprise fund, so those funds can only be used for that purpose.
I've got a different question once we finish this part of it.
Okay. Did anyone have any then questions or issues with how 809 is written? Do we wanna like codify that the town administrator can administratively transfer between departments in a fund, or is that overly
I
restricted?
think it's overly prescriptive.
Cause we already allow that and it's done by ordinance. Okay.
So my other concern is loan of funds. So for example, when we bought, I think it was the Wise Farm property, we loaned money from the general fund to TNAF, the Trails Natural Area. And it then got paid back. And that's not covered.
So how does state statute handle that?
I don't believe there.
Is there no?
That might be a
I would just,
auxiliary question, I don't know that there is anything other than utility funds being, enterprise funds being, but there's no laws surrounding general fund and other funds loaning money. Our ordinance has some language in there.
Some provision for paying interest.
I don't think it just says that a repayment plan will be set up at the time the loan happens, which is just best practice.
to me, for completeness, it's probably worth doing.
For putting in what?
Putting in something saying the town is allowed to loan funds.
I mean, that's
Between-
essentially a transfer though, isn't it?
No, because it's paid back. A transfer is permanent.
Okay.
So,
So really, what's, I guess,
Yeah, interfund loans, yeah, so there is something in the ordinance. And I just think if we're having transfer in here, it seems to me to make sense to have loan in here as well, because they're very similar.
they do specify long term.
The Board of Trustees must authorize a loan by a 5-member majority vote.
Yep.
And there's a time limit on the loan also.
We can even just say the town shall adopt an ordinance to cover loans of funds between accounts, or something like that. I mean,
so if they can, by ordinance anyways, just completely transfer funds from money from one fund to another, then the loaning of funds is more just for our own operation's sake, right? That we're saying, hey, we're gonna take funds, but we'll give them back. But it's not like a,
it's an encumbrance on the receiving fund.
how do you mean?
They're obligated to pay it back.
Right.
The transfer you're not.
So if it's transferred with, we promise to pay it back, you're saying that you don't have to pay it back.
Well,
Yeah.
if it's transfer, it's an administrative transfer, it's not a loan. And maybe, I don't wanna spend too much time on it, but it happened in the recent past. And that's why I think it's worth putting in.
And it was approved as part of the budget, right? The loan was approved as part
And
of
the purchase, the terms of the
The
purchase.
purchase was, yeah, and I don't know how,
And the transfer was authorized under the provisions that are in the code, so it
yeah,
isn't necessary to have it in the charter.
okay.
Okay. Anyone feel any differently or okay with leaving how written? Cause yeah, like I think this doesn't prevent loans and we've got a loan process written in ordinance, right? So.
Well, it's just a consistency issue to me, that's all. Why would you have transfer and not loan, but if everyone's okay with it, it's not a critical issue by any means. It's just a consistency issue.
I'm okay with leaving it how it is. I don't wanna add more overly prescriptive stuff. So but I don't know, rest. What do you,
I mean, I know if if we wanna move from ordinance to charter to lock it in, that would be the purpose of doing it.
Right.
Do we feel strongly enough of relying on an ordinance, or do we wanna lock it into the charter?
And we do talk about it actually in the open space section, which we could take out,
Oh, yeah, that's right, there was talk about loans on
and that's what made me think of it, missing from here.
Can we, when we get to the open space section, can we review how it looks there and then revisit this and
Sure.
and maybe consider what would create the most consistency?
Yeah,
That's fine with me.
okay, so in 809, we may wanna come back to talk about loans, talk about inter-fund loans. Okay, let's see, 810. This just allows the council to change the budget throughout the year. There was one of the comments had to do with emergency appropriations, and that felt it might be relevant here, but I'm hard pressed to think of where something would be an emergency appropriation when the town council already has the ability to move money between funds and change the budget at any time throughout the year.
Can I ask a potentially dumb question? Does the town, like, the budget is the budget? Or do you go and do like mid-year, do a revised budget presentation saying, okay, now we have some more figures, and then you present like a revised budget to the board? Or is it you only have the budget and that's it?
The budget is adopted in November or before December 15th, but we usually do it in November. And then there is a first supplemental appropriation in about May for that same current year, and then we do a second supplemental in September, October. So it does get amended twice.
So there's opportunity for amendments, it sounds like at least twice. So I don't, and I think we have other places in, during emergency ordinances or, other places where we talk about emergencies. I don't necessarily feel that my personal opinion is I don't really feel like we need to continue to add more to what's already there. If it sounds like it's something that already happens, they have the authority to do it. We talk about emergencies and what happens under the emergency section. I feel like that's kind of redundant. That's my own personal opinion anyway.
No, I agree. Cause even in this section, there's at any time during the fiscal year, it can be adjusted and modified and changed and reappropriated, so.
And those times that I set out, the May and October, those are just our normal times. There is nothing that requires it to be those times. So there's nothing that would prevent it from being
Any other time.
immediately after some sort of emergency.
Okay, so I'm okay with 810 as written. Anyone else feel any other? No. All right, 811, records of authorized expenditures. It just means that they're public record and conveniently available. Again, that word, phrase. Independent audit. And this is another place where at the end there's that phrasing with made available by the town clerk. So maybe we can add that conveniently available phrasing here as well. We can ask, Anyone else have anything here for 812?
The council selecting the auditor, is that
Yeah, actually,
concern?
I have questions on that. How does that process work? And I apologize, I've never really followed finances closely enough to care that much. So I'm sure, I'm sorry, I did not come up with a headline for it too.
I love the honesty, thank you.
No, I just wanna know, so in the world I live in, does it go out for bid? Do you have to change auditors every so many years so you don't, have somebody who, there's the risk of somebody being maybe too familiar with it and things getting glossed over? Like, what does that process look like?
We go out for our, oh, sorry.
No, please.
We go out for RFP, every 5 to 6 years, I believe it is, and, there is I believe it is every 5 years they do a partner rotation, so even if you stay with the same firm, they are required to rotate partners, so that it is someone different within the firm reviewing your audit.
Would you feel better saying approved instead of selected by the council?
No, I don't think that, I was just more curious as to what the process was to see if anything,
Okay.
See if it does need to be.
yeah, no.
I guess the council selects it based off the recommendation of the RFP.
Right, which is
So
why I was thinking approved, but either way,
I think that's fine.
I think it's fine too.
Alright, I'm good.
Good with 8:12 then, everyone? Alright, 8:13.
The question is, does A13 cover everything you do?
Does it cover everything? No, but I think,
Or
the Colorado statute, yeah, I
okay,
mean, it is pretty long on borrowing, so.
I think there was, one of the comments had to do here with potentially putting a limit, an upper limit on the amount of borrowing, right? Trying to remember.
Yeah, indebtedness.
Yeah. That's, no, we lost that page.
Yes.
Item 5.
Page 3, item 5.
Debt cap at 3%.
Yeah,
Value.
yeah, so it's already limited by state statute. We are already well below it.
So the concern is
The
that
question
we
is-
could go up to 3% of tax value, which
do we want to set a stricter limit in the charter, is really the question.
I'm no.
Do
I'm no
we-
finance, so I don't know where this, like,
No, I mean, I personally feel that 3% is a great debt cap, and we've always remained well below it, and it gives us the flexibility to borrow funds if the economic environment shows that that's a good use of our
Well, the reserve requirement is always at least 3%, right? So,
And bond indebtedness is always subject to voter approval.
correct.
So can't do it without the voters approving.
then anyone okay with leaving this one how it is?
Well,
Any other, so any other questions with 813?
so is the cap 3% of, what is it, the taxable value or 3% of actual value?
Taxable value.
Taxable value.
I don't know this answer, what's the difference, or how much is the difference between the two?
A lot. Actual value is essentially market value that's determined as part of the county assessor's revaluation every few years. And taxable value is typically for commercial property, 29% of the actual value. And for residential property, it's 7.23 or something like that percent. So taxable value is significantly lower
Less.
than market value.
Okay,
And it's less volatile, right?
that's kind of, I just wanted to understand it a little bit better.
Yeah, I think if you look at it, if you get I got my assessment in front of me.
Uh-huh.
And so that's the taxable value, whereas what you can sell it, if you go to sell your house, that's your,
And a lot of towns do things, they offset that with the mill rate and to get the tax.
anything else for 813? I think I was wondering why like that 813 2B notice of such hearing shall be published in advance. Isn't that required for hearings anyways, just by the definition of what is a hearing?
This is the only one that doesn't say like 7 days before.
Right, but there's already, that's a requirement for a public
Yeah.
hearing already.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering why this is specifically called out as requiring a hearing, or requiring prior notice.
And
Reassurance for whoever's reading the charter.
We can ask Hillary if that needs to be there because of that, but
But if it does need to be there, we should probably put a date or a number of days.
Like at least 7 days.
Yeah, which
sort
is
of thing.
consistent with everything
Just
else.
so,
yeah,
For reassurance.
the fact that it's specified but not with the date means it would override the other, or is 7 the legal minimum?
I guess.
That's
Totally
Yeah.
question.
This is a
Yeah.
Hillary question.
But, or we could just put it in there. For reassurance.
Okay, 814, long-term rentals and leaseholds. We get into a lot of financial language and legalese.
How do they do that?
Isn't it that one specifies ordinance
Instead of resolution.
in 814.1? I think we currently do that by resolution.
We do.
It seems strange.
Maybe we should change that to resolution.
And actually that, it should probably be changed to resolution because otherwise we've got the 30-day thing and, our vehicle leases,
Oh.
we usually gotta go as soon as we can.
We do need to sign them as soon as we can. We have to get the vehicles. for
Right,
another-
right, so. I
Page
understand.
That's your catch.
Sorry, 30 days and you don't get them for,
Until you've forgotten about them.
Yeah.
Until you forget.
You're like, oh, I wanted that Taurus? I didn't think I wanted that. Just kidding.
Okay, so just for consistency's sake with prior wording, let's change that to resolution as well. Anything else on this 814?
Just any place we see Anna Lorraine.
Yeah, it's the only time I saw it anywhere else.
What's the point of using you?
How it should.
Isn't it added value?
Like, where did it come from? It's property tax. Just a really fancy way of saying it. The tax based on assessed value of an item.
Lawyers, man.
It's just strange, it's the only place it said.
Yeah.
It is strange that it had to have been copied from somewhere, right?
Well, yeah, a lot of this started from.
They charge somebody to go look it up themselves to find a fancier word than property tax. I'm being a lawyer right now.
That was a little weird.
Which part?
This number 2,
Yeah, contract.
14.
What is your financial reading of that?
It's been my bag of
It seems out of place. I mean, it's just basically saying that we can pay for these purchases and any basically available revenues that we have,
Right.
which is kind of a given. I mean, how else do we pay for any contract? I guess I'm not sure what's the benefit of leaving it in.
Yeah, this section, to me, seems like it's overly prescriptive. There are charters that don't have these provisions at all. I was looking at the Castle Pines charter, and particularly the phrase each such in the leasehold agreements, section 1, the last sentence, each such agreement and the terms thereof shall be approved by ordinance. You do these
We're gonna change that to
leases
resolution.
for vehicles.
All the time.
Does that require an ordinance?
No, that's why we were
We
saying
said we're
change
gonna
it to
change
resolution.
But even a resolution,
Well, yeah, we do bring them to the.
We bring it to we currently bring them by resolution because they are generally over our purchasing policy threshold. Not because of what they are.
okay.
So this would be, like, even if I wanted,
Right.
even if, not me, but Patrick wanted to lease a $10,000 tractor,
No.
you can even find one for 10 grand anymore.
Little way.
Little baby tractor, then they would have to come for resolution, but, so that, like, you're right, it might be overly prescriptive just by naming a nature of something when that's already in our purchasing policy if it's over a certain dollar amount.
So should we just
This
take out
would
8?
require for any dollar amount,
Right,
Yeah.
so, yeah.
yeah.
You don't
Should we
have
just
enough pens
take
in the
out-
office, time for a resolution.
So should we just take out 814 in totality?
I would want, yeah, I think I would want Hillary's read on this as well, just to see from a legal standpoint why this is put in.
It just says that this just enables the town to enter into leases.
Yeah.
I vaguely remember at some point, one point, when I first started here and when I worked in Louisville, there was some stipulation that we could not enter into leases.
Right, yeah, and that was one that we actually asked the voters to change to
Is that what it
delete
was?
it.
Yeah, okay,
because
Okay.
That's perhaps why it's
Yeah,
here, is to
we-
make it clear that we
Cause I
can
remember
enter
we
into
needed a new
leases.
copier at the rec center and we couldn't go buy one because they were so
Oh, yeah.
expensive. And we wanted to lease one and finance told us, no, you can't do that, it's in our charter, you can't lease. It's like,
Right.
what?
But that was, the opposite was.
But it was the opposite, it was, so yeah, it surprises me that it's specified, you know. Maybe that's why it's specified in here, cause they went to.
In the fancy word.
What is the statutory allowance then, our municipal, because we have been doing it, right? We've been
yeah.
leasing
Yes.
things,
That's
so
not like,
by default, towns can lease things.
as far as we are aware,
So-
like you said,
There's
like
that.
perhaps
Okay.
a Hillary question is like, where did
Let's-
this ever come from?
Is this language necessary
Yeah.
to authorize these things?
I mean,
Right.
most of our vendors actually have like governmental leasing,
Oh, yeah, I
I mean,
mean,
it's
it's
definitely a
it's an
thing.
entire branch, yeah,
Yep.
Okay, so we're gonna ask Hillary
if there's any
what
benefit.
purpose, yeah, what purpose this serves, and we can figure it out later. Short-term notes.
Is that
Standard.
something that we do?
We never have, I would say that having the flexibility to do so for cash flow, reasons is good to have and pretty common. We have never been in a situation where we have needed to.
So would this kind of tie into then the emergency appropriation type of things, like we're about to run out of money and we need to issue a short-term note or something?
I mean, I feel like it's a little different just because it is talking about taking on debt, but it's stipulating that it has to be 12 months or less, so
Okay,
I see it slightly different, but
then per your read, this is okay to,
by ordinance, again. Sorry, I just noticed that part, was that I don't know that that's,
Oh, that would not be fast enough.
no, and
Yeah.
generally this is part of your investment policy, which authorizes staff to enter into a short-term note situation, because like I said, it's usually for cash flow balancing purposes.
What economic conditions would require you to do something like this? Cash flow wise, so why is cash flow so short? I guess I'm leaning on, is it tax collection?
I would, yes, I would, let's just say this is, I'm making this up, and I can't see it ever happening, but say the Department of Revenue had some sort of meltdown or cyber attack or something and couldn't distribute the funds.
Yeah.
That would be a situation of if they have 6 months where they're trying to clean up their software because they can't send us our money, we would need a short-term note to cover our day-to-day basis, although we do have such a reserve that we might not actually, but.
and in that sort of situation, would the ordinance 30-day requirement,
Oh, that'd be a problem.
It would be resolution, I would think.
Or you could do an
Or just administratively?
This feels like part of an investment policy that you can do administratively. I guess I'm not sure what is common though. I mean,
So can we ask Hillary about
I'll see if it
15
I
as
think
well?
what?
We're not sure either.
Okay.
Another Hillary question.
Yeah.
The reason to have it
Not
by
worth-
ordinance or resolution is so that the town council is involved in those decisions. Should some runaway finance manager decide to take lots of loans out for
That's true. I mean, I don't wanna have all, I don't wanna have all the power, but
yeah, this is just requiring that such a decision come to the board.
Resolution, I think makes
I
sense.
think resolution, and then,
even, I guess I am hesitant simply because of
scheduling.
what could potentially, we're talking about emergencies, I guess,
Yeah.
like you said. I mean, we're talking about, we're not going to get our money tomorrow that we thought we were, and I have to make payroll. And waiting
For the next
2 weeks for the next board meeting could be problematic.
Would that be an emergency situation where the board would have to be called in anyways, so it could be.
Perhaps, but I guess I'm like, do you really want that for something that should be more of an administrative decision? Because short-term notes don't have a lot of risk, they're not it's less than 12 months. We're not entering into long-term debt here. But I am open to.
That'll make it for me.
In Article 601, it talks about ordinances, and the very first thing says that ordinances are required for every act of creating indebtedness, authorizing borrowing of money, levying a tax, establishing.
Oh.
So we've already, you all have already put in here or agreed that 601, that indebtedness requires an ordinance.
Okay, so we can't keep this one by resolution.
The-
Or
the-
we'll change 601.
The other option, I mean, and when you think about it though, that's the reason for an emergency ordinance.
Right.
It's because it can go into effect
Immediately.
and it would still have to be published,
Right.
because we have to publish all ordinances, so then the public knows that you've chosen to do this.
So even this one, 815, it does also then seem kind of random then? Because it's specifically calling out it's calling out a specific type of indebtedness where we don't really do that for other things, right? Like a 12-month short-term note.
I agree with Chelsea, it's a Hillary question.
Okay. We'll ask her about the necessities here.
Sorry, you guys.
Our current ordinance, or our municipal code does not address short term, it just says long term, we don't address long term.
Okay.
Again, hopefully it will be beyond all of our times that this ever comes up.
Okay, municipal investments then. This one just seems like,
The only question I have about that is may versus shall.
yeah,
It's already in here.
You want it to say shall adopt?
I think it's important, if we're gonna talk about it, it seems important enough that they should.
right. It seems kind of useless to have it in a charter and then be like, they can, or you don't have to.
Exactly.
I like that.
But what is that, any sort of restriction on what you'd be able to do then?
It's guidelines, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, we would adopt our own guidelines. We have some now that are pretty, it's pretty generic compared to some. The state statutes actually are pretty restrictive, so
Yeah.
there's not a whole lot of risk to not having a very detailed one, but it is one of those GFOA best practices to have a pretty detailed investment policy, which is on my list of things to already even make better than it is, so.
Okay,
Um,
so
I
from-
like shall in terms of, like, please do,
Yes.
please adopt investment policies.
We really pay attention to every single word, as we should.
I mean, that's like engineering requirements, that's like 101, right?
Yeah, if it says shall, I'm not
That's
gonna
a
do
big
it.
That's what's gonna happen.
Yeah, exactly.
That is it.
Haha, no shall, I don't have to.
Too many engineers in the room. I'll leave.
Alright, so 817, special districts.
There, I think may is reasonable.
So this one has to do with like Title 32, like metro districts, right? Cause that's the Title 32 CRS that it calls out.
The special districts would be like rec center district, Carbon Valley or something like that.
But it also includes the metro district.
Yeah, Title 32 is metro districts,
Yeah,
isn't
that
it?
governs metro
I'm gonna
district.
run up to my mic.
Okay. So. Yeah, I guess,
Absolutely support like having something that gives them the power to
so
limit the maximum mill levy.
we can, yeah, this one is a big one, especially with stuff that's going on now regarding metro districts in town. It's probably too late to govern existing ones, cause those have already been
They're
created.
they're grandfathered.
But I mean, we're still growing, so is there something we can put in here to avoid the sorts of situations that we're seeing in my neighborhood?
I think going forward that the board of trustees or the town council has that authority because special district has to come to the town and the board has to approve a service plan that spells out everything, including the mill levies that are applicable in that special district.
So one of the things that it seems to be standard operating procedure for this sort of like underhanded metro district operations is they request, like they incorporate at the metro district, and then since they are the only ones who, you know, have an interest in the land at the time of incorporation, they request and are issued approval for insane amounts of debt. Like I think metro districts hold something like $2 trillion worth of debt in Colorado. And so that means once the town starts being, or the neighborhood is built out, they don't have to ask the residents who live there anymore for approval to basically issue more debt because they've already got an approval up to billions of dollars worth of debt that they can issue. So for background, in Erie Highlands, right, there's 5 metro districts. The only one that has any sort of say over the budget is one that covers a strip of land that has no houses. So it is completely staffed by the builders' representatives. And every other metro district is required by an intergovernment agreement that was set up when there were no residents. Each one is required to funnel all their money to that one metro district. And yes, I don't know specifically for this one how much debt they've requested and have approved, but they did the standard and they've never had to request more. So I'm wondering like what kind of speed bumps or guardrails can we put in here? Cause I know like every time they request more debt, they have to come to the board. It has to
when they wanna raise the maximum mill
Right.
levy.
Mill levy, yeah.
when they raise the maximum.
And most of them have come with their requests at basically the maximum mill levy. And fewer accommodations for the people that are gonna be living in that neighborhood. So Malcolm has done as good a job, I think, as possible to try to limit the pain of this situation, but it's not going away.
Yeah, the existing metro districts, there's very little the town can do about those. But
Right.
the Board of Trustees did adopt a policy that requires a financial analysis of the metro district before they even approve the plan or consider the plan that shows that the mill levies they're asking for are actually needed to fund the public infrastructure in the district. So that's a key consideration. There are also notice requirements to potential buyers of property in the district that spell out here's the taxes you would be subject to within that district. There are governance requirements that require that there be immediate opportunities for new residents to be able to serve on the board of the metro district. So we're trying to address all these abuses that are clearly happening in metro districts that were formed years ago, maybe 1 or 2 years ago in some instances, or long ago. But dealing with the ones that were passed, that's where we need legislative action at the state level.
So yeah, we can't do anything about that here because, Title 32 has already been applied to those situations. But regarding all of the, best practices you guys are implementing and ordinances for metro districts already, is there any part of that you feel would be served well by putting in the charter? Something like like you said, the analysis and assessment is required, and because I think one of the big things we want to avoid is the issuance of the massive amounts of debt well beyond anything that's in any way reasonable.
It's a very broad and complicated issue. Regarding this particular provision, I don't see any harm in it. I also don't think it's necessary because I think the town council, and when we're home rule, we can also limit by ordinance. service plan that's coming to the council for approval.
It also says may, so.
Yeah, it's right. And all of that is covered in that Title 32 section that governs how metro districts may operate. So it really gives the governing body of municipalities the authority to approve, to reject, or to revise service plans, and that includes a lot of authority. They can reject it outright for reasons we don't like it.
Well, also, if we don't put too much in here that's prescriptive, the town could elect a council that really wants to be pro-growth and is going to allow that type of activity, which, you know, might be the desire of the town at that time. I don't see us going that direction, but the state does protect us a bit, and the town is already adopting policies and ordinances to limit further damage.
The reason you would put it in, I would think, is almost as a political statement more than an enforcement action or anything. Because, I mean, you could say, the town may build a jail.
Yeah, I think that's why, like, as it stands, the may is already performing that function, right? It's just, it has no teeth, it's like, you can if you want to.
Which they could do even if it wasn't here.
Yeah.
Do we need to do it just to, like, cause there's some that you have to exempt yourself from state law specifically, right? Is this one of those areas where you have to, I mean, if we're already doing it, it can't be, right? If we're already trying to limit future metro districts, it can't be a.
Yeah, it's provided for in Title 32 that the governing body of a municipality can enact controls or can refuse to approve a service plan for the metro district. Or can modify it and then adopt it. So there is a lot of control at that stage in the process. Once it's adopted, whatever's in there, and the ones that were adopted 10, 15 years ago, those are what rule in that particular district.
Because it says Title 32, it means that if Title 32 changes, we have to go along with the changes. So it's not protecting us from changes there.
No, because it says any districts formed under Title 30, this applies to any district formed under Title 32.
It's kind of back to that Cora conversation, right? Like, I
But
feel like we keep coming back to.
Yeah.
But with Cora, it's simply we're saying if Cora changes, we're covered.
Right.
This isn't saying that. This is saying it'll be whatever that title says.
So I guess I'm not sure how that process goes now then, like if a new builder comes in and wants to establish a metro district, can you give like a quick rundown of how that goes?
Yeah, under our current policy, they have to submit a proposed service plan. That service plan outlines lots of different things. What are the boundaries of the district? What are their assumptions under which the tax rates that they're proposing to impose are based? What the maximum mill levy that can be imposed, the governing structure, who's on the governing board when it's initially adopted, how residents can become members of the governing body. We also have a point system that they have to get so many points for things like affordable housing, sustainability, open space, and other provisions, and they have to get a minimum number of points to be able to ultimately get the Board of Trustees to even consider it.
That's awesome.
That's part of the service plan.
Yeah.
We'll see
So
the budget.
those are all way and above what is required under state law. So what we've attempted to do is say, if you're gonna impose taxes on future taxpayers in Erie, you need to have a higher standard of development. And the financial review requires or sets really a cap on the amount of profit that a developer can reach. And if it's over 15%, then that would be clear grounds for saying you need a lower tax levy. We don't need to fund unreasonable profits. And that 15% is a reflection of development is a risky endeavor. They are entitled to a reasonable amount of return on their investment, and that's sort of the generally accepted minimum to be able to make development happen,
So,
enable it to happen.
so they're, just so I understand, cause three of us at least don't live in a metro district. So it's created to fund the infrastructure for the development.
Right.
Yes.
And it,
So why does it never expire?
it does expire,
Why did Vista Ridges never expire?
50 years,
50 years.
something like that, 40 or 50 years.
So it's written into it.
Some of them do, some of them do go in perpetuity if they have maintenance responsibilities.
Now, Vista Ridge has the golf course is sold, but Vista Ridge has pools and other amenities for the residents, whereas
Playgrounds.
yeah, I mean, I guess Erie Highlands has a pool too, but some of the newer ones are getting nothing, just streets.
Alright, so as,
We could go
to me,
for-
as 817 is written, I would take it out. I don't really think it's just making a statement unless we wanna put something in there that they have to have an end date.
But then if we put something in here, where's all the rest of the stuff we should have put in here?
I'm just,
You know, because I mean, if we're gonna touch this topic, we should go, why did we only address this one aspect of it?
Metro district and not.
And the town has already applied a policy and has
Can we
a
put,
procedure.
can we put guidance here for like the town shall adopt by ordinance thing like
Guidelines.
guidelines for special districts that emphasize X, Y, and Z, whatever. Cause you're already doing that, like you said, you're making sure that citizens are protected from abuses, that we're not putting future citizens on the hook for unreasonable tax increases down the line, things like that. I don't wanna put all of that specifically in the charter because then that's overly restrictive and all of that. But saying that we will have ordinances that protect citizens who are gonna live here from predatory practices. And we can work on the wording, but I think some sort of shall there would be nice. And without the specifics though, cause then that leaves flexibility up to the town council in changing conditions.
I agree. I feel like, you know, at least for people that I've talked to, it's important that we have something that ensures the power to limit
Like there's a,
these
like,
metro districts.
Developer.
when I told you about stuff going on with the Erie Highlands Metro District right now, it's like, it's a huge deal. Cause they're trying to enforce new fees, not taxes, new fees. And again, because the money holding district has no residents and they refuse to fill seats with residents, that's an abuse on those of us who live in the neighborhood. And it's really important to all the people I've talked to that, you know, there's some protection built into some sort of document like this.
so why don't we leave this open?
Yeah, I'd
Come
like
back
to chat
with a draft.
with Hillary on that too.
Yeah, just-
I'm curious what the legalities are.
Yeah, I've
on
been
what-
trying,
What we can
exactly.
say.
I've been
So
trying
I-
to do a bunch of research on it because
Let's-
I don't wanna say like, this is what any metro district has to do in town.
And then we get sued.
But there needs to be some sort of protection.
Can you put this on the go back list?
Yeah, I think this one, I wanted to talk about it while we're here, but yeah, I think this is one of the big go backs that is important to a lot of people in this town.
I think your idea is good.
Survey thing.
You basically lead you leave open a requirement that the town has already met, but it maintains that requirement.
Yeah, it maintains it for future and it lays out what those requirements are meant to protect.
Cause what if a bunch of developers get on the board of trustees?
So, yeah, I think we need to revisit here, we don't wanna, the sentiment that I was hoping to go for is that we don't wanna be overly prescriptive in ways that get the town in trouble or lock us into doing things a certain way. But we also need something in here that protects residents of the town who may be moving here and not aware of what these metro districts mean to them. Okay.
And so, yeah, it turns out that Eagle and Severance are only two of the large number of charters I've looked at that have something in your tree. And so and one copy from the other. So it's-
Alright, so yeah, we'll go back to that at some point. Okay, Article 9.
Short one.
Yeah, it's really short.
Good.
So taxation, power to tax. So there was one of the public comments was regarding a lodging tax, and this would be the place to put it. But I don't think you'd want a lodging tax specifically called out in the chart. Like, I don't think you want any specific taxes called out. Cause then it's like you're trying to sneak in the tax with the charter, so I'm okay with leaving any specific taxation out of that. Yeah, I mean, and any tax has to go towards, to the residents anyways, so. This way we can separate that, okay. Certification of tax levy. Anyone have anything here, 902? I'll be honest, I'm not sure what. Like, this is just saying like how much property tax maximum?
Yeah, we certify to both counties what our property tax for next year is, what our mill levy is for next year, and that goes to council or to the board right now for approval.
Okay.
And then we submit that to the counties.
And what is the 902.2, what does that mean?
Similar to the budget, if for some reason the council chooses not to approve it or something happens and we can't get it approved, then it automatically certifies as the last year's rate.
Catch all.
My question, it specifies Boulder and Weld County. I know there's been talk of potential Erie becoming its own county.
If it doesn't,
I don't
it
think
would
that'll
change.
happen in the short term, and if it does happen, we need to come back and redo the charter.
There's a charter.
Okay, the entire charter gets redone. Okay.
Well, we need to.
Hopefully Stafford would be like, wow, people who wrote this before were amazing.
I wasn't sure if it could just say like that, I don't know,
Containing counties.
yeah, it's something that it's, I don't know.
I think, like, I thought about that too when I got here, and I was like, well, if there's anything, like, if we wanna be our own county, we have to have agreements with Boulder, Weld, and the
Right.
state already. And we'd have to rewrite our county governing document anyways, so
Okay,
I figured that a charter rewrite would happen at the same time.
they can catch that then.
Yeah.
Alright,
Future people's problem.
fine with that.
Okay, so 902 is okay. 903.
The only comment is, do we need item 2?
What's the Gallagher thing?
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to look up the calendar.
I did look it up.
Huh?
It was repealed.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, so then
We're certainly not.
we're not bound by it. Okay, so 903.2 can go away, right?
The one question during the campaign that came up was whether we wanted to collect the taxes ourselves versus having the counties collect them.
Is
Or the
this
state, rather.
is this the article in which it would put that?
Where would that go in?
So, this is authorizing them to do it, so if we want to do it, or the council would
Oh,
generate.
this is all like certification of like our power to tax, but not collection of taxes, right?
That's much more of an administrative function, in terms of who is collecting the taxes, whether it's coming directly to us or if we are contracted, we would be contracting with the state.
But right now, as a statutory, state requires, yeah.
So this.
So do we have to do something that allows us the option in the future?
Or is it just the nature of home rule?
It is the nature of home rule.
And that's what this says anyway, now that we read it.
Okay.
They're authorized to collect if they want.
Yeah, so powers of taxation available to municipalities, and that is one of them, right, is the ability to collect your own tax. It's just we're not necessarily taking that power here. We can adopt an ordinance later.
Legal question.
But yeah.
Well, and it might be part of the transition plan if you wanted the town to.
In general, the transition, when a town transitions from statutory to home rule, they contract with the state to continue collections while they get all of the software and infrastructure in place to then do their own.
So it's
for
like
a
the-
year or two. It's
The
a pretty
presumption is
standard-
that they will then be collecting their tax.
that the state will do it. I mean, you would have to have a contract. It probably depends on how much the state would then charge us, whether it needs to go
Yeah.
from our procurement
That's
policy.
happened in rural municipalities that have self-collected and then asked the state to take it over
That's
Okay.
true.
for a while.
So I think the question then is, in section 9, is there anything we need to add to make sure we have the power to collect our own tax in the future?
Jerry says it.
And the benefit of us collecting our own taxes is, does like the state charge us like a fee to do our taxes for us?
Yes.
And
So
there's a
And I-
delay.
what's the, and there's a
And there's a
delay.
2-month delay, yeah,
So what's
that's
the
the huge one.
return on investment, do you think, after buying all the software and finding the people to do this and paying them to do it?
It's hard to say, but there have been towns or cities that have found it to be quite the return on investment. That by having it more localized, you have more. Well, it's more timely, so that you can more timely address if someone hasn't paid.
Right.
You know that much more quickly, and you can reach out and try to work with them.
Mm-hmm.
And that you also are taking over the audit function, so that you are going into the businesses and making sure that everyone is paying their taxes, and it does eliminate the fee. So
Does the state charge?
it's hard to estimate. It's very situational.
Makes it easier for the taxpayer to make those payments, cause I used to pay sales tax on a business that was tedious to go through that process.
The state?
The state is actually more tedious than okay.
He's
Because it's
wondering.
Well, you still have to go to the state. You
You still have to.
Well, as a business in Erie, if Erie was collecting your taxes, you still have to file your sales tax reports with the state and the city. Like a partner in a
So
business
does
in
that-
Boulder, so.
Does that make it harder for the taxpayer?
Does it mean they have to do it twice, or they just have to like file it twice?
They just file it. I mean, so I do it for the brewery, and I just go into both websites and put the same numbers in. That's it.
I think one of the other things that came up during the campaign was if we collect our own tax, there's like, we can more accurately track how much we get rather than having to go back after the fact and ask the state for certain, like, make sure we get every amount we're owed.
I mean, theoretically, yeah. I mean, if we are getting the reporting directly from the taxpayer, we can then make sure that we are getting all of those funds. Right now, we just kind of get a report from the state. So yeah,
That says this is how much you
this
get.
is how much you get. Yeah.
Okay.
So I think we're okay with 1. The question is, do we wanna strike 2?
I mean, if Gallagher has been,
Oh,
yeah,
Appealed.
9-3, gotcha.
yeah, so 903
That's
too,
right,
I think we can
903.
strike it because it doesn't apply anyways.
Agreed.
Okay,
What's next?
Open space.
yeah.
290.
Really quickly, I'm just wondering if we wanna do something here like we did with Cora,
Exactly, Tabor.
with Tabor.
Mhm.
If it's removed by the state, do we want to keep it in town?
Which, I'm sorry, for which part?
For this
tax-
article.
For the part, yeah, I
just
guess it
overall.
would be kind of under 901.
Oh,
Yeah, I
you're
think it
right,
would be
Tabor,
901.
Tabor
But
gets-
that's the
Yeah.
thing, it's by
Okay.
constitution, so if it goes away,
Right, that's what I mean, because
Yeah.
that's what we did with Cora.
for the core, so we're,
Right.
And I would say that we should do it with Tabor,
I would agree.
just to protect our residents.
If Tabor is removed from the Constitution by the state voters, then the town of Erie should then have to remove it if they wanna remove it later.
It would be a double, so if it's removed from the Colorado Constitution, it continues to apply in Erie
Right.
unless the charter is amended to further take it out.
Yeah.
I could see that. I mean, we did it with Cora.
Yeah.
I think we should lock it in the charter.
I think it's good protection.
Yeah, cause when's the last time Tabor was amended? Like, as a, cause like, one of the questions I'd asked about Cora was like, it kind of locks in its current state.
Right.
So even if it's amended from in the later,
Yeah, it's only if it's repealed,
Right.
whatever the version was when it was appealed, it continues to apply.
Well, with Cora, we
No.
locked it in at when this charter is adopted, what Cora looks like
Yeah.
at that time.
because we can't,
Cause we can't predict what's gonna
cause
happen.
if it's as amended, repealing is amending it.
Right.
So we don't wanna include that wording that says, pursuant to Tabor as amended.
Mhm.
Right?
Got it, yeah.
So we could do the same thing as
Yeah.
at the adoption of this
Okay.
charter.
So 901, we wanna include the wording to kind of codify Tabor.
Reassurance.
Yes.
Okay.
Now we can go to open space.
Let's take a quick break, 5 minutes. Yeah. Okay, 5-minute break, we'll be back at 8:35.
Page with tiny writing, right?
Go.
Oh.
I guess I should start reading cafe tea, huh?
Like it's
That's what I keep
When
trying
does
to
liquor
remind
store
myself, but then
close?
I'm like, if I get home at 8:30, then I'm gonna be like wired
Wired,
until
yes.
midnight, it's like, I don't wanna
I
do
mean,
that.
I'm kinda like that anyways when I get home, cause I'm like, oh, that was a good meeting, that was a good discussion about, and like, I can't shut down, so I end up being at home reasoning to make it
Yeah.
boring.
I'm trying to find out how, I'm almost
That's
out
why
of
I
whiskey.
look like this.
No, that's a.
Can we get out before the liquor store?
Tea, for some
closes?
reason, the caffeine always hits me later. It's not like coffee that it's like right
Thank
now
you
I
so
feel
much.
it. Yeah, thanks.
Do you wanna hang around for the open space?
Yeah,
solidarity. I'm hanging out. He sat through 2 hours of finance, I'm hanging out for
You're
the
staying?
3 cups of tea, just trying to wake up and then.
I'm sorry.
Here when we're here
Sorry,
every week,
Patrick, we
aren't
have to
they?
keep
Just
you-
like
you did it
losing
all.
my mind.
Shaking a little bit.
That happened to me today. I had 3 cups that size of tea.
I've done that sometimes.
Seriously,
I do
he
that
sat
for
through
weekends,
two
but I'm like
hours
covered
of
with
more coffee than I
I can
normally
sit
do.
there and
That's
like
like
cool.
Regret.
I should eat something maybe.
Where are we going to?
Protein bar. Oh, I think I'd make adult decisions at this point, but I never do.
Tired. I need to wake up. Anything to
Never had these before.
You are fine.
I'm feeling the edge. I feel like I'm on coffee. Look, maybe not
You wanna try one before you commit?
I cannot shake it. I cannot shake it. I take
Press it together, just stretching it out.
Just hanging on.
It's just.
It has like cheese.
I don't know how it like further out, like it's like I have a brain in 2 7.
Did you hit a tree?
I'm underwhelmed. Not even
Well, like once the weather actually like stabilizes the body, yeah, your body will be ready to be like.
I have not. Hey, maybe that's what you need.
Maybe
I should try that.
I don't know.
I think it's awesome. I started keeping this thing in the bed with us. So when I wake up in the middle of the night, hacking, I'm like, okay, let's try down some water and see if we can.
Did you have to
get
ride
this,
down
but
on
I
the?
just
Oh,
cannot shake it. I don't
no.
know what I'm doing wrong.
What's that like?
I think a lot of it's stress.
Really?
I chased my future mother-in-law down on one of those.
Yeah?
She tore her knee and
And it's sick
Yeah, there are a lot of Amish population.
Yes.
Like,
I wasn't active listening.
It's not like that was.
My husband's from Fort Wayne. And there's we don't have them here obviously. And so the first time I went with them, I was like,
Wow, and then if you saw and you're gonna read it, we're gonna love it.
look at all like so now we just there's this thing every time I go there, they're like,
How much sleep did you lose over this?
because we don't have them.
It's so funny, I'm sure it's just, and I understood
So much
one
when I
thing, but
first
like,
put it together.
I was from
Wow.
southern Indiana.
you're efficient.
Hopefully it's succinct enough. Patrick had some great comments.
Maybe 5 or 6 hours, that was like. Walmart has a stable.
pull your
Yes,
horse
it
and
is.
buggy in and
Too.
like
I was
horse
like,
to have
what is that?
shelter.
I was like, that's the weirdest bike route.
So I've had friends that had accidents at Winter Park in the summertime.
She worked in Boulder.
And it's the same clinic, summer and winter. And he was the one that was bike control, he was the HEB instead of like the speed and stuff, but
Cause he was actually.
now you realize it's a fairly efficient operation, but the cost is ridiculous. Cause then you get a bill, and you're like, oh boy. Cause your insurance company doesn't like really help much.
When you say it that way, I was like.
I went to parties in high school, like,
Yeah.
isn't that dumb? Like,
He was in finance.
those kids went to France, just because they would throw it in separation going that far. Oh, right. And I was in,
And then he just retired.
I heard that, there's actually like, it's just a difference.
No, so Jeff.
Anyway,
I would
they have.
He's up with his prerogative,
It's a real thing.
Oh, wow.
Did
Did you just lay there the whole time?
English live,
Put me out to talk, moved me on the gurney and
I think it's at like.
Amazing.
Alright, it's 8:35.
Let's take our seats, huh? I really need my gavel.
Just go to the room
Anywhere you
and
go, we're
banging things.
Well, in the open comment section, I was sitting there and I was like, it was right here and I wanted to like.
If someone went longer than 3 minutes, I was ready for it.
It is fun.
If they went back to their seat and came back up, so.
It's fun to use, but
Yeah.
sometimes it's just like ceremony. If I wanna use it for real,
Honestly, like.
I never saw anyone use it.
Alright, everyone, ready to start? Okay, are we recording and we're good to go? Continue?
I didn't stop us.
Okay,
Oh, goodness.
It's still live.
We're still going.
okay, still live.
Hi.
So we're on open space now, and so Bob, you put together the section with help from Patrick, so I'm gonna let you lead. I want you to talk us through your thought process.
Right, so yeah, I started off with Louisville and then made many changes. So it doesn't look much like Louisville anymore. And so OSTAP has gone over it as well as Patrick, and thank you very much, because there's some really good comments. And in fact, you'll see near the beginning, the comment that where Patrick's saying, here must have items. We don't wanna make this overly broad, but we wanna make it so that well, actually, it's probably the opposite I would say, we don't make it overly restrictive, because we want parks to be able to do what they need to do. So, the first comment was, do we wanna make it just open space or open space and trails, cause Ash, you had mentioned that. It does cover both, but I don't know if the title matters for that or
So,
not.
I mean, legally speaking, do trails fall under open space as far as the town is concerned?
Correct.
They do?
Yep. So there's
Then I would like to keep the title, just so it's specified.
to open space and trails, okay.
Yeah.
Cause I gotta make edits in real time, but not take a lot of time to do it. So, I'm not sure why that guiding principles got bolded and, but, so it won't be in the final. So it's really, what are the principles for managing it, and then the 3 sub-bullets. So,
It doesn't say anything about trails in the purpose though.
no, it's part of open space lands, or do you wanna say open space and trails lands?
No, I think open space land, cause you said like,
Yeah.
I guess is the legal definition of open space. It's not enforced as including trails.
Fair, but the purpose, we have a purpose.
And it does say, okay,
This is the purpose of open space, or this is the purpose of open space and trails? Because 1, 2, and 3 are not trail specific, they're open space specific.
I think we can call it open space and trails, cause then in
that's
definition
what I-
7, it says
Yeah.
open space includes trails managed.
I did put that in there to make sure that we covered it.
Okay.
So I'll say and trails in the beginning, alright. And I think the first 3 things actually are, well, the first and third, I think include trails.
Cause you don't wanna like
Yeah.
mess up ecology with trails.
I see it.
All right, and the definitions are just, some of these actually came directly from Prost, so that we have a parks, recreation, open space and trails master plan that Parks and Recreation maintains. And so that's where some of these definitions came from. That was a good suggestion that Patrick had, just to use those. Conservation easement I put in because that's come up a fair amount in OSTAP, that it's a way we can protect land without having to buy it outright. We talked about executive session earlier in one of our sessions.
So all of these definitions would go under our dedicated definition section?
It could easily, I mean, that's fine with me. I just wanna make sure at least we had something in here, excuse me.
No, it's good to have, so we know what.
Does anybody have any questions about definitions? Rather than taking the time to go through them all. There was the one comment in a couple of these places says Colorado, like in 4 and 5. And there was a discussion, should we make it more restrictive to Erie, and the answer was no.
I agree.
So,
Colorado's fine.
I mean, you can say even like local, because then that's kind of flexible.
Yep.
Because certain ecologies, their locality is like specific. And being able to, one of the concerns was being able to bring in like wildlife or native plants that are not in Erie,
right.
but on the Front Range or not, on the eastern part of the state. And local allows a flexibility of.
Well, doesn't Colorado also allow the same flexibility?
Yeah.
But, well,
Let's go get some antelope out of Wyoming.
I'm trying to think, yeah, if there's something in Wyoming.
Or like the Eastern Plains, right,
I
right
don't-
on the Kansas
I
border.
don't think that this is that big of a deal. If local is better, let's go with local, it's a little less restrictive, let's move on.
So you wanna change to local?
I think that's fine.
Okay.
I mean,
Anybody feel
unless-
strongly against that?
No, unless
Okay.
local, unless local is something legal, that means something legal and we can't
I think local's probably,
better,
Okay.
I think that works.
just as opposed to not foreign.
Yeah.
So
I just made a quick note, I will do that in the next iteration. All right, then on 9, Patrick, you had a question about passive, to make sure we're not
Seems,
impinging on ECC or
yeah,
anything.
well, and it's a pretty nebulous term, it seems pretty prescriptive for what I think this document is.
All right,
And we're in the industry and we actually use words like passive or active recreation.
Yeah,
And then it also conflicts with like that when, in the industry, when you say recreation, we also have a recreation center,
okay,
so you
So-
could,
I will make a note, just take out references to passive.
yeah. Those uses are also defined in the Prost
Yep.
and in the
Yeah, I wanna
code.
make sure we're not duplicating the Prost here.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know.
and some of this will, it definitely crosses over to the Prost quite a bit.
Yep.
I mean, it's been our the way we function so far to try to spell stuff out and be as general or non-specific as possible, especially if there's another artifact within the town that can help with that, like the comprehensive plan or Prost. So,
Yep, and so I do reference that.
okay.
I have a question about these definitions. I'm not, and maybe I'm missing it because was just skimming through it. I'm not finding native plants or native wildlife
You're
mentioned
looking
in
at
here.
older,
4 and 5.
or, looking at an older version? No, native plants.
But I'm not finding them anywhere else in the
No,
article.
they were, which is why,
they might have been removed.
no, they're
Are there?
Native plants is
Native
defined in
plants, plants,
1.1.
So
wildlife.
101, no, oh, you're defining, okay,
So
so
I'm
it's
defining them
mentioned,
here and then talking about them later on.
okay,
So when we get to
All
it,
right.
I'll show you.
okay.
They're in the
Yeah, the
purpose.
first-
So like in purpose number 2, they talk about
Gotcha.
at the very top.
And in other definitions.
And there are, and also in stuff that OSTAP works with. Alright. Any other definition questions? Okay, so then designated open space, in Louisville, they had all these different classifications, we've taken them out. And so town council will listen to the open space and trails advisory board or town staff. Should that be and or, doesn't matter.
I think or, because we didn't define any specific boards and commissions. And I think
One comment, if we're gonna have an open space that talks about an open space advisory board, it should be in the charter that it has to happen. Otherwise, they could dissolve the open space advisory board and half the stuff in here is,
well, that's why it says or town staff. That's why the or.
there's
So-
other.
There's a lot of references.
There's many references to OSTAB,
Okay, so then
so.
the question is, do we need to codify OSTAB as a required commission?
For us to use the TNAC fund, we would have to have a recommendation of a citizen advisory board.
Okay.
I don't think the ballot language specifically said that it was the Parks or the open space, but yeah, for us to use a funding source, the board would have to take a recommendation of a citizen-led advisory board.
Okay, so we probably
It doesn't necessarily need to be an OSTAB, sort of,
correct.
it could be the planning commission,
Correct.
cause that one's required by statute.
okay.
But I think with all the references to OSTAB in here,
Yeah,
it'd be worth forcing that.
or do we wanna go the other way and generalize it to like citizen board?
No, I think that speaks to the character of our town.
Yes.
Okay.
I wanna try to be careful what I say, given my role in OSTAP. But it seems we're gonna have an open space section. I think having an advisory board specific to it makes
Okay,
sense.
then we need to codify it in the,
In boards and commissions.
yeah,
I think, yeah. All right.
okay, continue.
Oh, that whole comment can come out the next one because we've changed it now because we reference Prost and saying, so I'm talking about number 2. So I'm just gonna delete that comment.
So the entirety of 2 is gone.
No, the comment
Just
that
the
says do we
comment on
need it
two.
is gone.
Cause that reference.
Because it's
what is
changed a
local.
lot to, and this makes Prost the official document.
Okay.
Yeah, so the Prost is, we look at the Prost as kind of the definitions and the management tool and the guiding principles. And then the town code is really what governs how we accept open space or how open space is dedicated. So that Prost is kind of our, almost like our guiding document for maintenance related items. And then that's a citizen-led process. So the Prost takes feedback from citizens, it defines it, and then we follow that guideline.
And so one question is, the wording open space zone district did come from Louisville. Do we have a name for it that we use, or is that wording sufficient?
I shot that over to Sarah in planning to make sure that I think we tend to refer to it as ag open space, but I'll defer to her what the actual zoning.
Okay,
We have a couple of different ag open space classifications.
okay. All right. All right, and we do have some agreements where we do things jointly with Boulder County, which is why I left that in. 3 is just gonna refer back to Prost in essence, so I'm wondering even if we need 3 anymore.
Yeah, if you're codifying Prost in 2 and laying out its usage, do you need specific reference to 3?
So are you okay, Patrick, we
Yep.
strike 3?
Absolutely.
All right. And so this was a question, I think you had this question. It was one of the two of you who asked me about this one. If we wanna take land out of open space,
No, sorry.
no, it's all right.
That's what you're saying, is it has to be the approval of the registered electors, but doesn't that say that in the Prost, or is it?
Probably not.
Right, no, and I don't believe that's.
I mean, to rezone anything is,
Has to
well, that's the Board of Trustees.
After the board of
Yeah,
trustees.
So
so
what
the
you're
question
doing
is it important, cause that was the question. Should it be registered electors or should it be the town council?
It should be electors. acres.
In order to, I agree, I think, but in order to sell that land, to get any value out of it, you have to go to the electors.
Okay.
Isn't that in the
And
TNAC?
we will have a follow-up question. We'll check, or maybe it's Hillary or Kendra, I don't know if we're sending the questions. We should figure out if it's purchased with TNAC funds.
Okay.
If that does have to go back to a vote of the public to transfer the land or turn the land into something else.
So basically,
But this
we
would
wanna protect-
supersede that anyway. This would say, no matter what, how you purchased it, if you've designated as open space, to take it out of open space, you need a vote. Okay.
And I mean, yeah, based on the last vote of the TNAC fund, I think that would probably be like
Yeah.
a good provision to have.
And as of right now, all of Colorado really cherishes its open space, and we protected Cora, we protected Tabor, so we
Yeah.
protect our open spaces specifically in the charter, so.
And so the next section, this was huge in Louisville. And it was just way overdone. So we're basically saying, well, I don't even know we need number one, which is, well, no, it probably is all right. But does the council say this is ag land, or do you say, does Parks say it?
That'll be a staff recommendation.
It's
But is it approved by the council?
The zoning
Yeah, the council will change the zone.
Okay, so then we can leave that. And Town Parks and Rec or its successor are responsible and it's documented in Prost and ordinance.
Are you striking 104.1?
No, I thought we said we would leave it.
Well, okay, so this says.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
104.1, is that where we're at?
Right, that's what I thought you said. Yeah, we're leaving that.
We're leaving that. So this says the town council can designate subzones of open space such as but not limited to for public use, protected uses. So that, now is it the responsibility of the town council to determine specific uses on this open space?
So why don't I say based on recommendations of town staff?
Well, how do we do it right now?
Okay.
It's defined in the Prost.
Yeah, and you have open space, the Wise purchase or something like that, and there was some agreement when we made that purchase that part of it will be used for recreation, not all of it. And then it was up to you, the Parks and Rec or the Open Space Trails Advisory Board, what do you wanna do with it? But I don't think it ever came back to the town council to approve or to zone any section of it for that type of use.
Right, we have not brought anything back.
And so this.
So we should strike one then, that was my first
Yeah,
question.
cause this says we need to subzone it, and I think that's,
Overkill?
well, yeah, overly
Yeah.
restrictive or
All right,
cumbersome.
that was my first question about it. All right, so then responsibility, again jointly,
Hold on, I
again.
had one question on that one then, like, when the, what do you call it, the disc golf course was designated where it is, like, that was a town open space, and then
Correct.
Yes.
the town decided to just, what was the process then from turning that from town open space to designated for?
It's not,
It's just
it's just open space.
it was a citizen led, it was appropriate use, we already had active use in that corridor.
Yeah, so we had
Okay.
a group that got together to design the course and stuff.
Yeah, but there was no zoning changes.
Yeah,
No,
so
there's
the
no
town
zoning
didn't
change.
have
No
to do.
zoning changes. And right now we do have to run like a park plan, we have to take that to the board or the council for approval.
Okay, so yeah, once the citizens designed the course, you had to go to the board to approve, this is what we wanna do with this open
This is
space.
what we're gonna do. with
And
this
there was
space.
funds tied to it too.
Yep.
We had to approve the funds.
In the budget.
Would you have had to do it if there were no funds tied to it? Would you have had to go to the board?
It's a question for you.
Yes.
I think so.
Okay,
So then do we leave that in then?
Well, but it's more of a,
because I think that's already.
it's more of the approval of a plan.
Yeah.
Prost would cover it, I think.
Probably, but it's more of the, hey, this is what our plan is, and it's a presentation of the plan to the board. I don't remember if there was a vote on that.
It's pretty prescriptive,
It's out,
some of this,
as far as I'm
Yeah.
concerned.
Yeah,
the classification and the management is really pretty well defined in the Prost
And that's what 2 is really
and the
saying.
code.
yeah, and that's why I wanna take 104.1 out.
Yep, I've already have it.
Okay, excellent, then I'll be quiet, sorry.
That's all right, no worries.
That golf course is amazing, by the way. It's just cool.
It's an
Makes
amazing
sense.
course. It was fun too, to design it. So did anybody have any questions about 1043? Just basically saying, that we
That
work
means
with other-
unincorporated areas, right?
I'm sorry?
This means open space in unincorporated areas, or?
It's intergovernmental stuff, right?
So yes, so we do have some open space jointly with Boulder County.
And we could potentially with Broomfield,
Yes.
so it's governed through IGAs.
And purchase new open space, we're just basically taking the wording from TNAC.
So do we need to specify, like, in the last section, we talked about funds, do we need to codify TNAC?
Well, it's done by ordinance, and the last section talked about doing things by ordinance.
Do we need to even have this section in here? We have an enterprise fund for purchasing open
Okay.
space.
And does that mean it can only be used, we can only buy
Yeah,
open space using TNEC? I think that's the wrong use of shall there, eh? Maybe it should be may.
and then also says, it also says TNAC is only funded through property tax levy. So that means that the only money we could spend to buy open space is
Through property.
TNAC, which gets its funding from taxes.
We might
So
want
this
to
is
add
overly
sales
restrictive.
I
tax.
think, yeah, the funding, I think is it's over prescriptive.
Okay. So then we just wanna take out all of 105?
I think so.
I think so, I think all the
No,
rest.
no,
Well, wait, there's more.
we can't take it all out, cause we need the
Yeah.
we probably need something on executive session
Fund is
to
used.
give.
I think the purpose of well, no, not even the purpose, because the purpose is already laid out, so we don't need the fund is used, right? 105.1.2. Right,
Yeah, cause that's spelled out in the TNAC
That's
fund.
taken from TNAC,
Yeah.
from the ballot.
so that's what I was saying, like, if we are calling it TNAC in here, then we should codify TNAC as one of the funds that the town will maintain in the previous section, 8. If we don't care of the specific name and we just wanna make sure we maintain an enterprise fund, then we can make it more general and say the town shall maintain an enterprise fund for purchase of open space
That's
land.
probably a better way to go, cause the way TNAC's structured right now, it sunsets.
Okay,
And you can find ourselves in a situation in 10 years where the voters don't approve it,
Right.
and you wouldn't have this specific fund. And I don't remember if that was Louisville's charter, but somebody used the more general of just maintaining the fund.
Yeah.
Sales charter.
everything is a that's why I said.
That was a robust open space, I mean, that was like a management document.
Yeah.
We made a joke, we
Right,
made a joke in a
Yeah.
previous meeting that like, if you just say, if you talk about, I read it in some charter, and you say, it's probably Louisville, because
Yeah.
everything is in there.
And a lot of them just didn't address open space at all, but I
Exactly.
agree, it is a part of the character.
And that would take care of
Well, I mean,
2 as well.
more people voted on that than
Yeah.
anything, nonetheless.
Even like, yeah.
So using an enterprise fund,
The town shall maintain an enterprise fund for purchase and maintenance of open space.
It's a special fund, not an enterprise fund,
Oh.
right?
a special fund.
Well, were you calling it an enterprise fund, so you'd only be able to use open space money for open space?
No, we're saying we'll
That's
make it
true.
more general because that's what got into the loan situation too,
Yeah,
in some ways.
I'm trying to think of like use of like conservation trust funds, which you can
Okay,
use to buy.
I think we
In the
can,
general
I mean, we're gonna have to
General
review
fund.
this section again, so
Yes.
we don't have to come up with a specific word in
Okay.
here. Just that we know we wanna make it more general than
then-
specifying TNAC here.
Okay,
Well,
Yeah, cause we don't wanna specify a sunsetting fund.
right.
well then we don't need 3 either, which says if it's, you'll need a different funding source.
Yeah. We can specify when we write OSTAB into the charter that it will it will oversee the fund for open space, but
Okay.
we don't need to call it anything.
And 4 was just put in because when we had the discussion of executive session before, we said we put something specific in this section.
Is that because we don't allow the other advisory boards to have an executive session?
Correct.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good move, cause there's sometimes heartburn around that.
Yeah, and plus if you're considering purchase of a
Yeah.
property, it's,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
All the same concerns for board executive sessions apply to this, cause we're talking purchase of property and
Right.
loans and stuff.
So 5 is just saying it has to be approved by the town council. 6
I guess
is,
going back to.
I'm sorry, go on.
You have a 2/3 vote of members present
Yes,
instead of just the majority of members present.
correct,
Is that how we go into executive session?
yes.
I don't think that's how the trustees go into executive session.
Executives, yeah, trustees is just majority, right?
I think so.
I
Okay.
think it's majority present.
Somewhere I saw 2/3, but
We do 2/3 for a handful of things when we find it.
yeah. I thought it was,
Okay, we can just make a note, I guess, Bob, there,
Yeah.
to make it consistent with the rest of with the council executive session.
It is 2/3 of
2/3
executive
of
session.
council
It is?
present.
Okay,
Yeah, 313-1.
Yep.
Oh.
Okay.
okay, then we can leave it there, cause it's already consistent, good job.
Sorry about that.
no, it's fine. And you can't have a special session that's outside of a meeting.
Right.
So that's what that 3 is, or 2 is. And then, yeah, so 5 is just saying the town council approves it. 6 is saying, this was, maybe we don't need 6, if we're adding, this is where we said we're gonna come back, right?
Which one are, sorry,
You
the
got
number,
multiple
the numbering
numbers.
is off.
You're
Oh.
early because you're editing, so it's 5 right here.
Oh, I probably deleted something,
Yeah,
okay, sorry.
1055.
Okay, sorry.
So we're on 105.5?
5, yes, thank you.
Who put this comment in?
That's what I shouldn't have deleted, I should have just crossed out.
You're right. It's only for this one.
That's where you do the editing, right? The suggested editing.
Yeah, I have track changes, so I can go back to it, in fact, I can just
Okay.
review and turn it on markup.
So that 105.5, what were you saying about that one?
It's actually 6,
It's 5.
oh, this is showing,
Just call it 5, Bob.
5. I'll go back then to simple markup. 5, alright,
Where the purchase price exceeds the current fund balance.
This just talks about loaning.
yes, this is what I was talking about before, with the loan, when we said we may go back to see if we need to add loan to the other one.
Yeah.
We could just put it in here,
Well, but we talked about putting a clause in the general
yes, that's right.
finance area. It says you can loan money between these
Right,
funds.
in which case we don't need this.
Yeah,
Which
this
would-
would negate that.
Yeah, I think you might wanna cover other situations where it's needed and not just this one situation,
I
so.
agree. Believe me, that's why I
Yeah.
made the comment before.
That's why we were
No,
gonna-
it makes, yeah, makes sense.
So going back to that previous question, do we wanna then specify in 8 that funds can loan from other funds?
Yes.
And how is that process or the repayment or anything, how is that defined?
I think you defined it at the time as well, like you just wanna you want it to be in here so that it's possible and then.
So you just wanna make sure, cause all of that's covered by calling it a loan, right? That
Yes.
repayment is assumed.
Right.
Okay, so we wanna add the ability to loan between funds in section 8.
Right, and it's interesting, because here's where I should have put this for number 1. Where this last clause where open space may be purchased with development fee in lieu, or whatever, or we can just totally take it out and just say a special fund, and the fee in lieu, for example, would fund
Yeah.
that special fund.
Yep.
So there's, in the ordinance now, there's interfund loans, which is spelled out. The town of Erie will establish a repayment plan at the time. Any interfund borrowing is authorized. In order for any loan to be authorized from an enterprise fund to a fund which is not an enterprise fund, the board of trustees must authorize the loan by a 5-member majority vote of the trustees present at a regularly scheduled trustee meeting, and the loan term shall not exceed 5 years.
It's already there by ordinance.
It's already there by ordinance.
It's just, if we put something in, it just says it's allowed, so
Yeah.
if that ordinance went away, it would have to, it's still allowed to be done.
Okay,
I don't know.
so I think it was
It's-
like under 809 transfer of funds.
It'll be like 810 or whatever.
Yeah, we would just transfer funds and then loan between funds would be allowed,
Yeah, and then by ordinance, you would set the things that are already set.
whose terms and conditions would be set by ordinance. Okay.
And then I added, so it'd be 6?
6,
Yeah.
Gotcha.
The fact that we can use a conservation easement to protect property.
Are you taking 5 out?
Yes, I was gonna take 5 out.
And then 6 does make sense, cause yes, you do want to be able to do a conservation easement.
Okay.
Alright.
So that's all of 105?
So then 106, I'm really breezing through, good. Thank you for this. And I mean it. I forget where these things came from, candidly.
Yeah, and this one, it didn't seem to fit, so I wanted to make sure that I was understanding what.
It could have come from Louisville just to say, this isn't, I have no trouble taking this whole section out.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think it's needed,
I agree.
in my opinion.
This is 106 open space effect.
The first 106, yeah, I don't know how
Okay.
automatic numbering did 2 of the same ones, but. Alright, and then transfer of interest. Do we have enough in that other statement where we said removing property requires a vote?
It says removing, so if the town wants to take currently designated open space and then sell it off to a developer, that would need to go to a citizen vote.
Right, and we said that in,
But this one seems more broad, it's like you can,
Well, the grant of a license to use any open space land.
yeah,
like we do for ag land.
Yep, we have one.
So maybe we should take out, or,
do you want, like currently that's not governed by a vote of citizens.
But isn't the use or what you can do with it governed by the zone? The zoning
The
requirements?
zoning,
probably.
So
yeah, so
that's
the
gonna-
ag use and the ag leases are governed under those appropriate, and which is defined in the code.
Right, and so if open space is zoned ag, and you can grant license for agricultural use, but
Yep.
not for
Yeah,
other
you're
stuff.
correct.
So 106.12 is extraneous?
We can just take out all of 106, I think.
Like almost the whole thing.
I think both of them, yeah.
Let's see. Yeah, cause we've already specified that if we say that that a vote is required to remove it
Right.
from open space designation, then anything else, basically, it's assumed that it doesn't require a vote.
Correct. So, this is great, cause it's gonna be,
And the sale of any property has to go to, any real property the town owns has to go to the vote.
Okay.
So
So
that
this is
piece
only,
is taken care of.
okay, so yeah,
Say
they
that
can't
again?
just,
The sale of any real property
Yeah,
has to go to
So
the vote of
that's
the
covered.
people.
So
So that first line is sale, transfer of land, that's already covered.
And then we added in here, the rezoning would have to go to a vote. So, yeah, I think we've covered all the various ways to
Yeah.
get rid of open space.
so, and I'll go through and make sure that the definitions
okay.
are all required.
And then if you can come up with a fund definition for the open space maintenance that we can, not like a description of it, that we can add back into section 8 as a designated fund that we're maintaining.
And then, so maybe a couple quick notes at the bottom. So the first one is,
Cause that would be the place to put it, right? We want to make sure that our other funds section includes that the town shall maintain a open space fund.
and that was in Article 8, right?
Yeah.
And then the second thing was OSTAT in boards and commissions.
Yeah, we'll need to define and codify OSTAT.
Cool. I really appreciate this, guys.
Well, thank
Really
you.
appreciate you, Bob.
Yeah.
Thanks, Nick.
Cause I think, yeah.
You and all of OSTAB, I see Phil and Christine contributed here too.
Yeah, no, I
Oh, right.
definitely,
Article 5 for reference for boards and commissions.
thank you.
I mean, this was one of the things that pretty much we heard universally from people as well, is like, we like our open space and we wanna protect it, so this article helps us do that.
So my homework for next time is have this revised.
And I think, yeah, if it looks good, we can do a quick look over next time, and if it looks good, we can have Hillary legalize it.
Yep.
And
I
then
did
add it into the running draft.
Yeah, I'm going back over Patrick's first things that he wanted to see, so purpose is in here, definitions, open space in the code, OSTAB's role, we're moving to the other chapter, TNAC, we're moving to the other, and then we already represent the pros compound. What was SNS?
Well, standards and specifications.
Okay.
So anytime it got too prescriptive, just know we have a really robust document that says this is what open space is or isn't.
Do you wanna show people the size of Prost?
Yeah.
A visual.
He brought a
aid
network.
Yeah, so this is
Notebook
pros,
with it.
and it does actually define like how we have to maintain stuff. It's based on citizen feedback at the time. So next year, we'll actually do a Prost update. And then it says this is what this land is, this is the designation, this is how you're supposed to, and then we have to have management plans for each specific piece of land. It's then, so we can't treat all open space the same, so it's pretty robust.
And we did not want to put all that in the charter.
This is bigger than the budget, I think.
I know I'm a staff member, but can I ask a question?
Certainly.
Of course.
So all these definitions, Patrick, are they already in here?
Some are. Not all.
Well, I think with how we've cut things, we can probably remove a bunch.
Yeah,
We
you'll be able
will,
to
and I have a
cut
note to do
a
that.
significant number of
Yeah.
those.
Okay.
Cause there's like the specific like acronyms are all laid out, and we wanna try to generalize that.
I think the
So
first pass through, if I saw terminology that wouldn't be intuitive, I recommended that it become a definition if it was gonna be vernacular that was used somewhere else. But as you've cut it, this list will
Yeah,
kind of
I
get
think
down
it's
to the
only like,
essentials.
yeah, it looked like there was only gonna be like one or two things left in there. And some things that are used only once, I think you can define them where they're used as well.
I figured an error for now to put them in the
Yeah,
table,
that's fine.
and then,
We
We'll have
haven't
to-
worked
we'll
on
have
our
to do-
definition
yeah.
section.
exactly. Yeah, it doesn't need its own section,
Excellent.
or it does need its own section for the whole charter rather than for each article.
Yeah. Okay, so we good with section, oh, we don't have a number yet, but the open space section?
Yeah, we'll put it in wherever it goes.
Probably near the end, that's where it was, right?
Okay, then I think we're good on all of this. Let me go back through our drafting decisions. It was pretty light, but we had a lot of questions for Hillary. So let me go through the decisions first, and then I'll go back through the questions we had for Hillary. So we've agreed in 801 fiscal year is the calendar year. We will put a section 809 or a 810, whatever, to talk about interfund loans, make sure we have the ability to do that. Let's see, 814.1, we wanna say that it can be approved by resolution, not ordinance. Yeah. Let's see, we wanna change 816 from a may to a shall. 901, we wanna have the same sort of wording to codify Tabor. 903.2, we wanna strike that whole section. Or, yeah, 903.2, strike that. Cause Gallagher Amendment no longer applies anyways. And then in section, or Article 5, we wanna be able to codify OSTAB. And oh yeah, sorry, I missed up here, we wanna codify a fund in 807 for purposes of open space. Okay, I think that's all the decisions we made, and then the questions we have for Hillary. Can we make consistent the phrasing conveniently available rather than specifying town clerk needs to have some things available? If the audit for previous year is not complete, what are our options? Should we put any wording in there, or is it just say the most recently completed. I was gonna say, I liked your wording for most recently completed audit.
Yeah.
So that way if one is just, we can use the previous one.
All the auditors quit.
Do
No
an
auditors.
interpretive dance.
Right, that's when I would do interpretive dance, cause I would have lost it. And I'm in a whole nother world.
Let's see, 807, we had a question about specific other funds, but I think the only one we really care about at this point is the open space fund. For 808, we wanted to know what sort of wording we could use there rather than adopt. So like, what does this current phrasing restrict us to, and what can we use instead to make it more guidance rather than, requiring a board vote for everything? So yeah, we considered develop or review rather than adopt. But yeah, we need to know the legalities around there. Let's see. 813 2B. Yeah, why is that in there if notice is required for hearing anyways? Does this give like more flexibility, like they can give notice an hour before? Or like if we need to codify like 7 days, or just strike it and then it falls back to statutory requirements anyways. Let's see. 814, the leaseholds part, do we need that section? Because that's already a power given to towns. So do we need 814 for anything? Is there something we're missing? 815 as well, is that necessary? The short-term note section? Like what does that actually give us, or what is it protecting against? 817, a lot of questions about special districts, so I don't even remember what we talked about, but like just having the legalities of general guidance around what the town shall do about new metro districts or special districts that come before the board in order to protect, like, how can we phrase it so that it's flexible enough to allow our current operations for future metro districts to stand, but also give like guidance and like require the town to actually act in the citizens' best interest around special districts. So that might be a complicated one for Hillary to come up with. Well, I mean, there was a bill that was before the state last year, there's 2 new ones coming up this year, and it's just like, it's a huge topic in general. And so we're just asking Hillary to look at all of that and come up with a good one for us. So it might be a lot. For section 9, article 9, sorry. The question we had there was, do we need to do anything to make sure that the town can collect our own taxes? Do we need to say like some special magic words in here? That's all. I think that was it. Did anyone else have anything else that I missed or forgot?
Tabor, did you have Tabor in there?
Yeah,
He mentioned it.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Codified Tabor in 901, yeah, that was in there.
as it stands now.
Yeah. Anyone else? Anything?
I have a question about the polls, or are they, those are the top, let me phrase this. So the first 3, those are anonymous, so we can't tell if someone voted multiple times.
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay, because the Facebook
Whoa.
Wow.
How do you know that?
one, we can't, because you can go in there and you can see, okay.
But you can make a Facebook account.
Well, that's
a
that
lot.
never happened before.
You can see who's
You
voting.
can see you can see who voted, but you can't say that so all citizens voted.
Yeah.
How much you can do.
I'm just asking, because the question,
There's 2
There's 2
questions.
questions. 3 you're talking about once.
question 3,
All I did was
districts
copy and paste from what she sent me, that's fine.
That's so close.
Yeah, I don't think we can make like
I know, yeah.
hard decisions based on that, but I think it gives us guidance
It
as we
tells
go
us
through
that,
this.
it's not overwhelming.
Right.
Well-
It tells us they're just as conflicted.
My
as we
opinion,
are.
Yeah.
these polls are not random.
right.
So they are not representative of the
Right,
town.
it's
Well, that's fine,
statistically
So-
valid.
how else are we gonna gather
They're not,
information?
that's.
I don't know if it's even worth gathering information, it's not gonna be useful.
I think this is useful. I
I
actually
think
think
it's
this is useful.
Yeah, I think,
I mean, I think it's very useful in the town versus city,
I think,
clearly.
yeah,
That's,
Right?
I mean,
Like-
that's,
I think one of the big
Going door
things-
knocking again.
Yeah, I think one of the big things for wards versus at large is an education issue. I don't think people,
I would say like what this tells us is as we go out and do more of that citizen outreach, this is one of the questions we should be bringing to them, like, cause it'll affect a lot of things, it'll affect all of the elections going forward and how the town is represented.
Yep.
And so as we have people going to like the senior citizens events at the ECC or meeting with their, neighbors and neighborhoods, this is one of the things we should all keep in mind and ask and gather more information if people are confused about what it means. Educate and ask for information, cause so what that tells us is we need to do more gathering on that one, cause it's completely split. People probably don't understand what the ramifications are, cause we barely do. And what it would, but even knowing what it would mean as far as how we do things going forward.
plus having pretty much all the information, cause even up to last meeting,
Yeah.
we didn't know how many times we can redistrict.
Well, even Hillary didn't, she kind of shut Ben down and now we're finding out there is kind of a little thing there.
So if we know that we
Yeah, I think
can,
that's huge. I think we
Yeah.
can't even really go anywhere with any of that until we even know what our capabilities are.
Right.
So it's complicated, but we'll get there.
Yeah, and
And
so,
once we get there, a lot of other things will just fall into place, so.
Right.
We'll be alright.
so I think, yeah, this is that third question, even like as it stands now, we just need to, as we're going out doing our citizen engagement, engaging with people on social media or in person, that's one of the things we need to focus on, we need to gather more data, and it just needs to be more targeted.
Towards the end, we should probably talk about some kind of engagement assignments or
Yeah.
homework.
yeah,
we
I didn't mess up, I ran out of time today when I was at the ECC to find out about talking to the seniors
Okay.
group, so I will do that.
and on something that close, I think we should have, all of us should have the same bullet point.
Yeah.
Information,
Yeah.
like this is what this means to go this way, and this is what this means to go, they try to keep it simplified, but,
Yeah.
We should give a single message, you're absolutely right.
So,
And we didn't ask
Yes.
May versus November, cause or April,
We're
we
set
were
on-
very set.
Yeah.
And
Cause there's no
the thing
purpose
that
again.
came back, for the comment, I was wondering, should we send a question back? Do you have any statistics on the number of voters? Because that's really the overriding one for us.
I read that article, the reason Denver does
Oh, I know.
April is because they've done April.
for 100 years.
Well, they did May, and
Something
moved
in
it
there,
to
so-
April.
They moved it, yeah.
Yeah.
But like
Really?
their thing was
Yeah.
just, this is how we've always done it, and we don't wanna overwhelm people at one, in November.
that makes, yeah, no
But,
offense
yeah.
if you're watching.
Well, no, the other thing which was interesting is partisan versus nonpartisan election.
Hot even.
Well, no, even odd even is.
Denver's nonpartisan.
No, I know, that's why they wanted it on a different cycle.
Oh, yeah,
I get what you're
I don't
saying.
know, I want
Yeah.
voter turnout.
Is
That
that
was the
why
only-
is that why even years is currently winning out over odd years?
I think even years is winning because people wanna vote less often,
Yes.
Mhm.
even if the ballot's a little longer.
Even if it's long.
Well, they didn't realize they're voting every year anyway. Because they're county elections.
But I think, one of the things we'll get more engagement for sure.
We
in
definitely
the-
want more voter turnout.
Right, so I think
And if
November-
we move to districts, we need more voter turnout.
I think November is a much better thing. believe me.
And not everybody votes every year, that's the thing though, is
Yeah.
in the even years, because it tends to
Right.
be the bigger stuff, that's when people turn out more. Cause I was.
So, getting back to my question, do we wanna get back to the person who did the comment, or just let it go?
You can comment again.
Yeah, we can,
He's watching right
He's gonna be mad at us.
no, we can,
But,
I can respond to the email and just let them know that we'd considered and we think the pros will outweigh the cons here.
and I would specify that we think there's gonna be much more not we think, historically.
Yeah.
The statistics have shown there's much more participation.
Yeah, and for a
In
giant
November.
city like Denver, that's, lower participation, they'll still get a good turnout. But like you're saying, if we go to districts and we're gonna have like people elected with hundreds of votes only in a town of 30,000.
And that's one reason, cause I read something about ranked choice voting. That's one reason against it.
And we'll
This is
cross this
complicated.
bridge when we get
Yeah.
there.
I know.
That's one of our two
Yeah.
to deal with
I
later.
know, it's.
It's 9:23.
Yeah, but per Adam's point, we do need some homework assignments for voter engagement.
We don't have to do it tonight.
Okay.
Let's
Yeah.
put it on
Gotta
the
wanna-
agenda, maybe an
So-
agenda item
Okay.
at some
Yeah,
point.
so next week, let's talk about what our plans are for voter engagement. We can, other than the polls. We need to come up with 2 questions for our poll for this coming week. What else do we need to know based on some of our go backs?
My brain is goo. I worked all day.
Change the fiscal year.
No.
No, you didn't see her, you're sitting next to her, but you didn't
Oh,
see
no,
her
I saw
face.
Operation.
Yeah, I actually was gonna bring that up for discussion, and then her response, I was like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know enough to argue, so I'm just gonna defer.
Right.
Leave that up to the professional.
Vacancy,
No,
next 2
I'm just looking
questions
to
at
go
the
back.
next agenda,
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
like in an agenda, cause it's late right now.
Well, we were trying to do these weekly, so I'm gonna send the next one out on Monday, or post the
Can we
next one
just
on Monday.
defer to you and
Okay, I
Brian
can try
to
to
come up with, thank you.
and send it out
Thank
to
you,
make sure you
gentlemen.
guys know it, and then we can do the same thing where I'll send it out, give you the weekend to look over it, and then post it on Monday.
Can we take some kind of voter poll or something on how people wanna be engaged with in the first place, since that's something we're discussing? Like,
We're trying to keep the
I'm just
polls like, just simple, I don't
curious
think,
what they like do we need to try in person, I mean, like,
A poll
what
of
do
if you
people
like
want?
polls.
Like, yeah, like, is this even a thing? Like, is this making?
The question's going to be, you're reaching people who are already on social media
we're
or
already
whatever,
engaged
who are
in some
already,
way.
well,
engaged.
and already on electronic media.
And
So-
want to engage.
The goal is to, yeah.
We're trying to, like, I think we need to figure out how
And
we engage
Ben's
people
right,
who
and
aren't
want to.
traditional.
I agree it's important,
Yeah.
I just don't know
There's a
how.
lot of selection bias.
It's
Yeah.
such a,
It is.
Yes.
Okay.
engagement is such a varied thing.
Alright, I think we are good for today then.
Thank you all very much.
Yes, we're done.
That's official adjournment? Alright, cool. I'd go under there, Brian, but.
I'll get to
I gotcha.
I got,
I have kids, I'm on the floor all day.
Thank you.
You're fine.
You smooshed your tag.
Brian's so passionate, chucked his glass.
Like I.